the thread and takes precise control. Oh, bugging the machine, he sets the truth alight, demolishing the shadows, bringing clarity to sight. A master of the mind, a subtle, graceful fight, leaving no doubt.
Hey, what's up, brother?
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm alright.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about?
I wanted to talk about I want big dicks in my ass. Oh,
It's okay.
oh.
Anyways, if y'all disagree with the background or have any questions, request up as guest. All right, perfect, Jax. That's awesome. All right, here we go. Got someone requesting up right now. What's up? Astrology.
How's it going? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I just find it kind of funny how the Jews, and I don't want to throw off your algorithm. I'm just gonna say the Yahudim, all right, from here on out. The Yahudim had
Well,
a
real
rule
quick, do you
book and a
disagree with
law book.
anything on the background?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
What do you disagree with?
actually, no, no,
No.
no,
All right.
nope. Yeah, no, I don't. All
All
right.
right. Well,
Have a
right
great
now
one.
I'm just looking for people that disagree with the background.
No problem, sir. You have a great one.
Of course. Have a good day. God bless. All right. Nayad. All right.
Yeah, we support you, bro. Continue.
Yo. What you want? What? Request up if y'all disagree with the background. Hopefully we get someone up that disagrees to actually start this live instead of a bunch of trolls. All right. We got Diego. All right. Oh, Diego got off. Okay. We'll wait. Request up if y'all disagree with the background. You're all good, Diego. What's up, y'all? Y'all on YouTube? What's good? All right, we got El Chico.
Yo,
Yo, what's up?
what's up, bro? I'm an Eastern Orthodox Inquirer, but I'm just, yeah. So I've heard that we don't actually have a proof that Saint Irenaeus is can like trace back to Saint John. That he just claims that himself, and it's no reason to believe his claim.
Okay, yeah. So, like, when you're looking for like proof, like, what exactly are you looking for?
Like, I mean, the things like I can pull up my notes, but it seems that like he writes in 180 some around there, so, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's just writing that he heard John, heard the sayings of John, and like, so when I bring this up, they say, why should we trust him? Like, why should we believe that he actually goes back to John? Like, I don't know what exactly, what proof I would need, but just, do you have anything to support?
Yeah.
that
So when it comes to Irenaeus tracing back to to John, the pattern for him is John had one of his disciples was Polycarp, and one of Polycarp's disciples was Irenaeus. When Irenaeus himself testified that he was that he knew Polycarp personally, I believe it's I know Eusebius quotes it. I forget the exact thing. I think it's here, let me share my screen for the YouTube. This might be it. Eusebius Church History 5.20.5-6. Hold up, there's 10 matches here. I gotta find the exact quotation. I believe it's in Irenaeus's Church History, Book 5. Yeah. Okay. Book 5, chapter 20, verse, like section 6. He talks about how he knew Polycarp personally and was talking to him and those types of things. So like Irenaeus, according to the church history, according to, his own testimony, he personally knew Polycarp, and Polycarp was a disciple of John, so that would be like how he dates back.
Yeah, but what's it called? So you're saying Irenaeus knew Polycarp. So then the question would be, how do we know that Polycarp was a student?
All right. Honestly, when it comes to that type of stuff, right? Like, it's kind of like a thing of like really just trusting Irenaeus on like his
Yeah.
connection to Polycarp. Obviously, it's Polycarp has external sources in which that attest to him being taught by John, like Tertullian writes about it, and Jerome, and then all write about it. But when it comes to Irenaeus connecting to Polycarp, it's really just Eusebius's quotation of Irenaeus, affirming that he would personally knew Polycarp. But outside of that's really all we have in like terms of like evidence for that occurring.
But the thing is with Eusebius of Caesarea is he said that Papias, right, is not reliable. He's the second disciple of John. Because you got Polycarp of Smyrna, right? And you got Papias of Hierapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that Papias is a man of literally, quote unquote, small intelligence.
All right. Yeah, but Chico, in regard to your question, like that's all we really have in terms of like answering that question or evidence.
Yeah, okay. Then I have just a final question. This is about the Bible though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you know how we Orthodox interpret the 2 Peter 1:4, that we partake in the energies. But I've heard like Protestants interpret that as just being partakers or like being filled with the Holy Ghost. So it's not about partaking in actually God's nature, it's just being filled and lived by the Holy Ghost.
Yeah. So in terms of that, obviously, like I would ask them to kind of justify that that's what it's referring to, because the Holy Ghost isn't mentioned within the passage, right? It specifically says that you may become partakers of the divine nature. It never mentions or references the Holy Ghost. So that's kind of what we would call eisegesis, which is where you're just kind of inputting your own interpretation versus taking it from the text, which is like an improper way of interpreting a text. So they would have to justify that the divine nature actually doesn't mean the divine nature and it means the Holy Ghost.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. Appreciate it. What's up, St. Ambrose?
Oh, it's good. I'm actually hear about the 1054 incident.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, like what are you Christian? If so, like what denomination? Like what do you hold to?
I'm a deist.
You're a theist?
Deist.
Okay. Deist? Okay. Yeah, so what about the 1054 situation?
Well, basically, because I've been like, learning about Catholicism, right? And then I actually noticed that pre the schismatic incident that happened, all the councils basically were basically following the authority of Rome,
Mhm.
the Church of Rome, and the earliest canon that we know of the Bible that we found out is closely relative to the Catholic Bible than the Orthodox Bible. So my question will be like this, right? Why the Orthodox churches are not submitting to Rome?
Yeah, we don't submit to Rome because within the Orthodox Church we affirm that Rome schismed, but the main reason as to why the schism occurred is obviously there was disagreements when it came to the papacy and in terms of like the filioque and those types of things, but I guess the final straw was when they held when they conducted their council. They didn't do it the way the previous ecumenical councils were done and how it was supposed to be formatted, where you have like it's the church as a whole, you have the East and the West come together, right? It was just the Western bishops pretty much excluding the East, kind of dividing the church, right? Um, that was kind of like the final straw in terms of why we did schism. Um, and I think there's obviously a lot of issues and disagreements we have between the Orthodox and Catholic Church, obviously on terms of like filioque, types of metaphysics, um, immaculate conception, transfiguration, etc. But I think like if you're trying to pick a primary reason or primary like thing as to why we are in disagreement is I would say like the filioque. I think that was pretty much just the main reason as to why we schismed. I don't see that the filioque represented within scripture. I think it's what we would call like just a man-made innovation. It's something that's
Well,
unbiblical.
yeah, but I would say it's the case for basically most of the teachings, right, that are passed down, and there is a need for clarification. So I kind of like see the logic when they say, well, it's actually, you need to hold the magisterium, and then if it's approved by the magisterium, then it's clarified, this and that. So I don't see an issue with progressive clarification of scriptures.
Yeah, we don't
Would
we
you
don't
agree?
we don't either. It's when if something goes against scripture though, that's when we do have a problem. Um, we would affirm that we affirm progressive revelation and like things where it's like, okay, this is the this is the base of X and how it's established, and like through like logic, this is kind of like the necessary things that would have to occur in order for that to work, and those types of stuff. Like those types of things, there's not necessarily a problem with that. It's when what you are affirming is explicitly against scripture. That's when it's a problem, because obviously we affirm that there's two infallible authorities, the church and the Bible, and those go hand in hand with the Catholics and the Orthodox. If you were to affirm something that directly opposes scripture or goes against scripture, then you would be in error, right? And we would affirm that the
I think there's a
filioque directly goes
misconception
against
when
scripture.
oh, my bad. There's a misconception when it comes to like papacy for them. Not saying that all the traditions within Catholicism is like established using like the apostolic succession, but the thing in I'm trying to see how like it's all started, right? All the problems and what is in common and what is not in common, how it could be like, what's the word for it? I actually forgot. How could it be like come together, like getting communion again? But I don't think it's possible to have like communion with the Catholic Church for you as an Orthodox.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, that's like kind of like a gray area. That I personally don't want to get into. I know some people like there's stuff where it's like if you're some people affirm like if you're Orthodox, like priest gets sick and there's no one else to do service, that like it's fine for a Catholic to come in and do that stuff. Like I don't get into that. It's just something that I haven't extensively studied, so I can't give like a
Opinion on it?
justified opinion on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the thing is, I've been reading some of the letters of Saint Irenaeus of Lyon against like heretics, right? In his book Against Heresies, and he was saying basically that you should not mix with the heretics.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like consider the Catholics or the other denomination like heretics, for example?
Yeah, we would affirm that the Catholics are heretics.
Oh, all right. So there's no possibility to have like some sort of communion unless one of the parties willingly submit. Just like the
Yeah.
I think the Assyrian Church did that with Rome.
Yeah,
I think
like
they were like
where it
something.
stands now, like in terms of like us reuniting, it's not going to be the Orthodox Church submitting. It's the only way we're ever going to reunite is if the Catholics submit. And that's just like kind of the nature of the situation. And I mean that's just the only way anything's ever going to happen when it comes to us uniting. They would have to like submit to the Orthodox Church and affirm the Orthodox teachings that include like dropping the filioque, papal infallibility not being a thing, those types of things, which I don't see the Catholics doing. So I don't foresee us ever reuniting.
No, maybe in the future, or who knows? But what do you think about the Miaphysite position?
Yeah, so when it comes to the Miaphysite position, obviously there's people much smarter than you and I that can that know how hey, this metaphysically breaks down and those types of things. But I just personally affirm that ultimately, if you look at it from the lens of like the ecumenical councils and those types of things, they're in the same position as the Arians, right? When it comes to Oriental Orthodox, where there was an ecumenical council. They affirmed that their specific view was heresy, and then they schismed from the church because their view became heresy, right? They're in the same position. That's just the nature of what it is. Ecumenical council that was valid, that is dogmatic. There is like the valid bishops, it was the church coming together, those types of things. Determine this, and then that goes against your position, so then you schism. That's the position that the Orientals are. I think ultimately you can't affirm the Miaphysite position without really causing issues on ecumenical councils and whether they're actually dogmatic or not. Because if you can just affirm that, oh, this ecumenical council can be wrong because it disagrees with my position, then why are like the previous ones that you do affirm, like Nicaea, correct?
Carthage,
right? Yeah.
Constantinople, Antioch, Ephesus.
Yeah, because like the Arians could say the same thing, right? Like if you can just throw out one ecumenical council because it disagrees with your position, then honestly the grounds for the previous ecumenical councils would be thrown out too, because they're equally as valid in terms of like how it was conducted, the bishops, etc. And so you're like really just in the same boat as the Arians, Pelagians, etc.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just wanted to see like your outtake on that. Now, to be honest, I've been doing like some sort of a debate with the Miaphysites. So annoying, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the Miaphysites online are actually pretty good at debating, just because there's just not that many of them.
There's this waffling. Like honestly, there's this waffling.
Exactly. Like honestly, if you kind of listen to, for example, like Aiken debate and those types of things, like some of the stuff he says are just incoherent. You know what I mean?
I got invited by a Miaphysite girl to his Discord, right? I'm not a Christian, bro. I'm just trying to see like how they're gonna deal if I bring the Catholicism type of Christology, right? And how they deal with it. And that guy, he ran away from me, bro. I was literally in the call, right? I just started my premise, and then he ran away, and they kicked me from the call.
Yo, I got
Yeah.
a question, bro.
Hold up, Nizzy. Let Ambrose and I finish talking, then you can talk.
Nah, assalamu alaikum, bro. You Muslim?
Okay. Well,
No, but
just ignore Nizzy for now. Nizzy, let us finish talking, and then we can.
Nah,
talk.
go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah.
so yeah, they just waffle a lot. They use a lot of metaphysics, but the metaphysics they're using is just like, for example, it's just ad hominem, right? They're just using fancy words. They think because, like, most people, they don't actually look up the words. They think, oh, they're smart. Then they made a point.
Yeah. Also, like, for example, if you listen to Agan debate, like his grounding for my physitism is within like one or two church fathers, right? And obviously the church fathers aren't infallible. So like the things that are infallible is what would be dogmatic, right? What's universally accepted, those types of things, with ecumenical councils, for example. So they're grounding upon a grounding that's not infallible as their justification for why like my metaphysitism is true, which
He's
is just
secretly a
doesn't work.
modalist, by the way. I've been saying that for a long time. He's secretly a model. I noticed how he used modalist language, and then he's trying to like say, oh, this and that. I actually call him off guard, but I need to take him on. Actually, I'm trying to like kind of hunt him down, because I need to. They kind of worshiping him at this point. Like a lot of the Egyptians, they're worshiping this dude. His name is Do you know his name?
Agan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Anthony.
I didn't know his real name.
Yeah, that's his real name, bro.
Yeah.
And he goes with some dude called.
Don't say the real names. Don't say the real
Oh
names.
no, no. Never mind.
Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or is that it?
Oh, I actually got more, but I mean, if you wanna talk with these.
Yeah, let's hear Nizzy. Let's hear Nizzy. You don't got no more. Yo, what up, host? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Nizzy?
Okay. I got a question for you. So you pray to who? Jesus? Or who you pray to?
I mean, you could pray to any of the hypostases, or just God in general. Yeah.
So who do you pray to?
I pray to the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Who do you pray to? You said
I pray to the
Jesus is
Father,
God. Who
Son,
do you
and
pray
Holy
to?
Spirit.
So you played all three of them, right?
All three hypostases.
So how can you pray to Jesus, yet he also prayed to God like you do? He prays to God just like you.
He prayed to God.
Hold on. Host, calm down.
Well,
I'm
you asked me a
speaking.
question. You want me to answer it?
Am I done asking you the question? So host,
Okay.
so Jesus put his head down on the ground. He cried and begged like a little man. He said, spare the people. How come he can't spare the people himself? Why does he need the Father to spare the people? You pray to somebody that can't even spare you. But go ahead, answer.
Yeah. So if we go to that's an aspect
I hear
of
you
him.
typing.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the Bible verse, Philippians 2. My screen shared on YouTube. They can see that. So that's
Not
an
on
aspect.
YouTube.
That's an aspect of Christ being in submission to the Father while he was on earth, an aspect of the
So
human
he
nature.
stripped his own
If we read
powers. He
Philippians,
chose not to spare the people.
if we
He chose not to spare the people.
he chose to take on the form of a servant and humble himself by taking on
So he stripped away his
the human
powers.
nature.
He stripped it, so
didn't
he's not
strip-
all powerful. He stripped
He
away
didn't
his powers.
strip away his powers.
Then why
He
couldn't he
didn't
spare
cease
the
to be
people?
all powerful. He just became in submission to the Father and gave glory to the Father.
That's exactly what that means. He's not powerful
Being in
no
s-
more.
okay.
See, look, the
Humbling
contradictions-
yourself
the
and
contradictions
becoming
in front of your face.
okay. Becoming a servant and humbling himself does not mean you strip away your powers.
So you pray to somebody that's a servant of God, yeah?
I pray to
That
someone
sounds
who,
like- that sounds
in
like-
in
hold on,
his
hold on. You know what that
humanity,
sounds like to me?
in his humanity,
what that sounds
humbled
like
him,
to me?
humbled himself, and took on a human nature and gave glory to the Father,
That sounds
and
like a
then
prophet.
received all
That sounds
glory
like a prophet to me.
afterwards.
So he took away his own powers and got it back later, is what I'm hearing.
No, he didn't lose powers.
So how did he get his glory back?
Yeah, so when we talks about his
So
glory,
listen, look, bug. The contradictions in front of your face. If you choose
Okay, what's
not
the
to
P and
accept
not P?
Islam, you're retarded.
what's the P and not P?
What?
What's the P and not P? If you're saying there's a contradiction, what's the P and not P?
The P and not P is Jesus couldn't spare the people at the time. So what makes you think he gonna spare you
That's
in
not a P and
particular?
not P.
That's how to answer it.
So
How
a
come
P
he
and
couldn't
not P
spare the
would be,
people?
for example, P would be the apple is red. Not P is the apple isn't red.
I mean, it's basically like that.
That's a P and not
Jesus
P.
said he can. Jesus, you pray to Jesus to spare you, but he can't even spare the few people that was over there. How is that? Why did he beg to God to spare the people? Does that sound like no? Hold on, no, host. I got a question. Does that sound like a God to you? Does that sound like a God to you? Begging and crying to God to spare the people. Does that sound like a God to you?
Yeah, the
That's
idea,
that's
the
the man you
Christ,
pray to.
Christ being God
That's
is
the man you
explicitly
pray
taught
to.
within the scripture.
Hold on,
What we're
host,
reading
host.
here, okay, so if we look at the scripture in a whole and use valid hermeneutics, we look at the text as a whole, we see that while Christ was on earth, he was explicitly humbling himself and taking on this human nature and being a servant to the Father and giving glory to the Father. And then after he completes this mission, he then asks for glory and receives all glory, power, and dominion.
So
After
his power depends. His power depends on God giving it to him. Is what I'm hearing. He never had his power when he was a human.
he still had power. He just received glory. And-
I'm gonna need you to take a deep breath. Come on now. Come on, bro. The contradiction's in front of your face. If
Where's
you
the
choose not to
contradiction?
accept- that's the. Are you retarded?
What's the P and
Tell me,
not
are you
P?
retarded?
What's the P and not P?
All right, listen. You pray to Jesus, yeah?
What are you going to tell me the contradiction?
You pray. Who do you pray to? Who
I
do you-
prayed
Jesus,
to
right?
all three hypostases, the Father, Son, and
You
Holy
pray
Spirit.
to Jesus, right? You pray to Jesus.
He's one of the
Who does
three
Jesus-
hypostases.
Who does Jesus pray to?
In his humanity, he prayed to the Father.
Who does Jesus
I just
pray
answered
to?
your question.
Answer it. Who does
I'll
Jesus
answer it
pray to?
again. In his humanity, he prayed to the Father.
No. It doesn't matter if you was a cat, dog, human, whatever. Who did he pray to?
In his humanity, he prayed to the Father.
No. See, you bring humanity like that shit changes anything.
Well,
Who did
yeah, it
Jesus
does.
pray to?
It does
So
completely
he
because we
wasn't. He
affirm
wasn't a
Christ as a
God.
hypostatic
He was
union.
human. So,
No,
so-
see, this
so
is why
Jesus was
this is
human.
why bringing up in his humanity is important, because he's not just a human. He's a hypostatic union. He has the divine nature and
he's just
human
a
nature.
human,
He's
right?
God and man.
So he doesn't have his God powers. Is what
He
you,
still
he
had.
doesn't have,
He
doesn't
didn't
have
cease
no
to.
God powers.
He didn't cease to have his God powers. He just humbled himself and took on a human nature to.
So how come he
give glory
couldn't?
to the
How
Father
come he
all the
couldn't
time.
spare the people? If he's still God, how come?
Because
he
he
couldn't spare the
humbled
people?
himself to and became a servant to the Father.
So he doesn't have his powers. So he's
That doesn't
not God
mean he
no
doesn't
more.
have his powers. That just
Alright,
means he
well,
humbled
define a God.
himself and
What does a
became
God
obedient
mean?
to the Father, as Philippians
But
2, 6
calm
through
down,
8 says.
calm down. What does God mean? Tell me what God means. All powerful, right? All powerful,
God,
right?
we would identify God as someone who possesses the divine nature.
Divine. What does that mean?
The divine nature would be the possessing the one being of God, which includes like the
You
omnipotence,
sound
being
hysterical,
correct,
bro.
etc.
You sound hysterical. If you need to stutter this much
I didn't
and
stutter a
sound
single
this
time.
stupid, just to you did stutter, bro. Don't lie like that. Don't lie like that.
I mean,
If you
ultimately,
need
it's
to-
just an
if
ad
you need-
hominem.
Hold on,
So-
host.
Oh,
If
hold
you
on,
need to
hold
look
on.
this
Was that a
stupid-
stutter?
Repeating what I said is a
Like-
stutter? Hold on. Is not a stutter. That is
Mhm.
repeating what I said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Are you done
Now
with the
you
ad
understand it.
hominems, dude?
Ad hominem, I don't know what you're saying, but listen.
Mm-hmm. I'm listening.
So a God, right? All powerful, right? Yes or no? All powerful?
Yeah.
All knowing, right?
Yeah.
All knowing, all powerful. Does Jesus have those traits?
He does in his divine nature, in his divinity, yes.
Does he have all knowing and all seeing? And all powerful? Does
In
he
his
have that? Yes or
divinity,
no?
yes. Qua his divinity,
You're
yes.
not answering the question. Does he have it? Yes or no at all times?
He has it in all
So
time.
just say
At
no.
all
Just say
times,
no.
qua
Stop
his
wrapping around
divinity.
the question.
I'm
He's
not.
not
I
all
literally
powerful.
directly
Just say
answered the
he's not all
question, dude.
powerful. Is God all powerful?
He's God's all powerful. Christ is all powerful
So
in his
is
divinity.
Jesus all powerful?
Yes, in his divinity, yes.
How come he couldn't spare the people?
Because
How come he asked
that's
God?
once again, if we read Philippians 2, it answers this for us. The
no,
reason he
your
didn't do that is
explanation.
because the Bible
He
specifically
didn't do
says
that.
that he
He
humbled
didn't do
himself,
that.
Yo,
became
can I
obedient to the
interject really
Father,
quick?
and became a servant to
He
the Father.
didn't do
Lizzie,
that.
stop screaming, bro.
Host,
You
host,
hurting my ears. Like, you
host. He
screaming now.
didn't do that. We're just gonna
Hey,
ignore you, Amber. Yo,
Okay,
turn
so
off your
okay,
mic. We're just gonna ignore
so
you.
when we're basing off what he did or didn't do, what are we going off to determine that? Are we going
We're
off the
going off
Bible?
that. Hold on. We're going off. He didn't spare the people himself. He
No,
begged
no,
to
okay.
God. Look,
When
look,
we
look, look,
determine
no,
whether
he did not beg.
Christ
Hold
did
on,
something or
time
not,
out,
or
time out.
whether it's taught
Time
that
out,
Christ did
time out.
something
You
or
know
not,
something?
what are
You
we
know
going
something?
off
Hold up.
of?
You know something? You know something? He did not beg the Father to spare the people. He begged Allah, and he knows the power of Allah.
I'm just saying Christ is a Muslim.
Absolutely. What is a
Define
Muslim?
Muslim.
Surrendering to God. And what did Jesus do? He surrendered to God, man. He surrendered to God. He was the first to surrender to God. How can a God surrender to God?
Okay, so surrendering to God would make you a Muslim. So the Jews are Muslims?
Absolutely. In a way,
would
if
affirm
they
that.
surrender to one God, listen, if they surrender to one God and follow what the Quran teaches, be a good man, then
Okay,
you
so it's
Muslim,
more
of
than
course.
more than just surrendering to one God. You
I
also have to
mean, but
follow
no,
the
no, no, no,
teachings of the
not, no, no.
Quran.
Let me correct myself. Being a Muslim is surrendering to God, to the one true God, Allah. That's being a Muslim. You feel me? Jesus did all that. Tell me what Jesus did that isn't a Muslim trait. Tell me.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're defining Muslim as to mean you have to submit
See, look,
one who
you're
submits to
asking me
God,
about
and you also
Muslims.
have to follow
You're
the
asking me about
teachings of the
Muslims. You're
Quran,
leaving.
right? Would you affirm
Is
that
Allah
definition?
a father? Jesus prayed to the Father. No, Jesus prayed to God. There is no Trinity. The Trinity was made up. When did Jesus talk about the Trinity?
Okay. No,
Did
I
he talk
I
about
didn't bring up the Trinity just then. I asked you are you saying that a Muslim
I'm
is
reading
one
the
who
comments.
submits to God and follows the teachings of the Quran?
Of course.
Okay. So if Christ were not to follow at least one teaching of the Quran, then he wouldn't be a Muslim, right?
What? Say it again.
If he were to not follow a core teaching of the Quran, then he wouldn't be Muslim.
No, it's not. It's not only about the Quran. It's about surrendering to the one true God. That's what
So
that
does the
means.
Quran, like the Quran doesn't matter then in that definition? Or do you still have to follow the teachings of the Quran?
Of course, the Quran matters. That's how we shape us as humans to be the best humans
Am
possible.
I a Muslim?
Nah, because you pray to three gods when you should only pray to one God.
I pray to one God. We're monotheistic. There's only one being
But
of God.
listen. How can you pray to one God but Jesus begged and cried to the Father?
Would
That's
I
two people right there.
Okay, would I be
That's two people.
Yeah, you just identified hypostases or persons. Congratulations. Would I be a
They're
Muslim
separate beings,
if I affirm that I'm God's son, or I'm a son of God?
God has no sons, no kids, no nothing. He doesn't give birth. He does not do none of that. Okay? So don't say son of God. You are not no son of God. You're retarded. You have flaws. You don't got no son of God. You're not no you're not no demigod. Don't ever say you the son of God ever in your life.
Perfect. So with that being said, if we go to John 3:16, the most popular verse within the Bible.
Corrupted. Hold on. The Bible that was corrupted. The oldest Bible.
Okay. So
Hold on.
are you
What's the oldest Bible? What's the oldest Bible we have?
the oldest
In
Bible
Greek,
that's
right? In Greek.
complete
No.
within what?
Oldest Bible we have is in Greek. The Bible was
Yeah.
written in Hebrew. How come?
Okay, the
How
Old
come the
Testament is
oldest
written in
one we-
Hebrew, and the
And then we
oldest
don't got
manuscripts for the Old
First
Testament are in Hebrew, i.e., the Dead Sea Scrolls. They have manuscripts that date back the oldest, Hebrew and Aramaic. The New Testament was written in Greek, and our oldest manuscripts in Greek.
So it's not the untouched word of God.
Okay, so when you're
See, look. you
okay, so
have
hold up.
1,000
You're using
how
the
many
Bible to base off like what Jesus said and taught, but only when it's convenient to you, or only when it affirms your position, correct?
What? Say it again.
You're using the Bible in order to determine what Jesus believed and did and taught, but only when it's convenient to you.
I feel like let me give you credit where credit is due. I feel like the Bible has some of the word of God, some, but I feel like it's corrupted a little bit because we don't have the exact version that Jesus wrote.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
I affirm that the Quran defeats itself
Untouched.
Yeah.
Hasn't even been touched once.
I
The
affirm that the
same
Quran debunks itself when, for example,
By
in
what?
Surah 2:146, it also Tabari talks about this when it affirms that during the time of Muhammad, the people of the scriptures, the Torah and the Injil, conceal what was written of Muhammad, right? That's like would be the prophecies, etc. Whatever was written about
Wait, hold
Muhammad
on,
was
hold on. Share your
concealed
screen. Share
during.
your screen and show me where it says that. Wait, I
Yeah,
want to
go
read
to
what you're
Surah
talking about.
2:146 and Al Tabari's tafsir, if you want.
I can't. I'm gonna get out this. I'm gonna get out this live. Share your screen and show me right now.
I can't share my screen. I'm on you. I'm on my phone.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Or you can screenshot it and you can show the image.
I mean, you could just come to the YouTube stream if you want.
I'm not following your YouTube channel, broski.
You don't have to
You're
follow
not,
me.
you're not making it out no hood. You're gonna stay in the hood and you're
Okay.
never gonna
Okay,
get out.
you should keep ad hominem.
Jesus can never save you, bro.
Do you not
Jesus
have a
will never save
Quran?
you. Do I have a Quran? It's in English. I'm not gonna bring the English one to the, and I can't even speak Arabic.
All right. All right. I mean, actually, I have a screenshot of it translated.
Alright, good. Put that up.
All right. Hold up.
But hold on, why are
It's
we?
gonna be on the YouTube stream.
After this, we going right back to the contradictions I'm talking
Oh,
about.
you know what?
all
We
right?
can just go to the contradictions because you don't have a second
Oh, so you want to
device.
skip this part, right?
Well,
So
no,
you got
we
the
can
surah,
go to
right?
this part, but you're gonna have to go on the YouTube stream because I can't share my camera.
So you see that image you put? Jesus is God. I can prove God is easily debating Islam. You can take that off, right? And put the screenshot. Wouldn't that be smart? Wouldn't that be smart, Mike?
Well, okay, so I take the screenshot that's on my iPad. I then wait for it to do the iCloud thing, which will
Is
take
your-
like
is your
15
Wi-Fi,
minutes,
like-
and then I can post it on my background.
You can switch it right now. I can do that right now.
I know, but I have to
I can
wait
do it
for
on
the iCloud to connect.
Oh, see, look, you know what that's
between
called?
the
That's
two.
called excuses. That's called excuses.
Well,
How come you
I
have your
literally
Jesus
said
with
I literally said I can pull it up
how
on
come
the
you have
YouTube
your
stream,
Jesus?
but
You
you don't
have
want
your
to be on the
Jesus, but you're a
YouTube
coward.
stream. That's
I'm
not
gonna
an
get out this
excuse.
live if I swipe out. But how come you a coward even with Jesus? You're supposed to have faith in Jesus, but you're still a
How am
coward.
I being a coward?
So put
Because
it
I
up
don't
right
want to
now. Are
wait
you
15
silly?
minutes for my iCloud to download the image onto my phone so I can put it up
Is
as the
your
background.
iPad? You got the first iPad created?
No.
So it shouldn't take 15 minutes.
iCloud still takes time, dude. I literally am
You know
offering to
that-
pull
you
it
know
up
what that
on
sounds
stream
like?
for you if
You
you
know
want.
what that sounds like? That sounds like being scared. You know what that smells like?
Definitely.
Do you know what that smells like?
What?
That smells like pussy.
Okay. Do you have any more ad hominems you want to say?
So you don't want to show me the surah, right? So
I
let's go back to
literally
the other
offered to
type.
show it on the YouTube stream, dude.
If I swipe out of TikTok, you know what that's gonna happen? I'm gonna get out this or do you not comprehend what I'm telling you?
You can feel you're gonna be able to join back. I'm not gonna like block you from joining back.
That's something a Christian would do after I just contradicted you. You couldn't
Well,
even answer
I'm
a
live
single
on
one of my
stream. If I
questions.
do something stupid like that, everyone's gonna see. I'm not gonna do something dumb like that.
On YouTube, right?
All right.
I just said on
like, do you
YouTube,
want to
right?
see the source? Or do you want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
like?
Matter of fact, read it to me. Read it to me.
Okay, I'll pull it up on stream just for the people that do want to see. Hold up,
Okay,
I'm
read
opening
it to me.
Discord. Okay. In Surah 2:146, I'm also quoting from Al-Tabari's tafsir. It says, "Those to whom we gave the scriptures recognize him as they recognize their own sons, but indeed a party of them conceal the truth while they know it." Now, Al-Tabari says that they conceal Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace, even though they find it written with them in the Torah and the Gospel. So, during the time of Muhammad, the people of the scriptures, the Torah and the Injil, recognize Muhammad as they recognize their own sons, but indeed a party of them concealed the truth, being what was written of Muhammad in the Torah and the Injil, which would mean that the Torahs that existed before the time of Muhammad had not been, what was written of Muhammad in them had not been concealed. So where is Muhammad written in the Torahs that existed before the time of Muhammad? For example, outside of like the thousands of the little manuscripts, like you have the Sinaiticus, you have the Dead Sea Scrolls, you have the Septuagint. I mean, oh, why'd he leave? Come back up, Nizzy. Come back up. Oh, you're gonna check YouTube? Okay, yeah, take your time. I just have this. I just have the screenshot of it all translated. If you want the actual Arabic to translate it yourself, you can go to altafsir.com, ALTASFIR.com. You click on the Arabic, right side for the Arabic, and you'll click Al-Tabari. I believe it's page 2, in which I'm referencing. Hold, PhD. I'll bring you up after Nizzy, if you don't mind. Yeah, Nora, you can come up after Nizzy. I don't want to bring someone up now because if Nizzy leaves, then I'll bring someone up. Yeah, you're all good. Nizzy's taking his time. I've left it on stream long enough. He should have been able to see it. He can't, Houston. If anything, if I was him, since Muhammad isn't in the Dead Sea Scrolls, I would say it's in like the tiny little fragments where he's not there, where he's like missing, where there's missing verses. I don't know, Ella. I'm waiting for him to rejoin. Nizzy, are you gonna come back up? We're waiting on you right now. You know what? We're gonna set a timer. Let's set like a 1 minute timer. Nizzy, I have a 1 minute timer. Once this hits 4 minutes, we're gonna move on to a different person. Oh, he left the stream. Okay, all good. Nor, you said you wanted to come up, right? All right, never mind.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
All right, can we like agree before we start to like complete good faith debating? Like, I won't interrupt you. I won't word salad. I won't, like if I don't understand your point, I'll ask you to clarify. Just
Yeah, of
good
course.
faith. All right, fair enough. So I'm atheist, obviously, but I think before we start, we have to agree that like, hold up, I'm really out of breath. I just ran, but we all start with like a baseline of nothing, right? So any claim you make, you have to prove it, obviously, right? And with like Occam's razor, right? Simplest option out of everything. I think the idea that there is no God is a simpler option than there is a God, because as history shows, the more and more we like delve into science, the field of God gets smaller and smaller. So I think that kind of lends to the idea that a God is something that you kind of have to prove, because as we learn more about the world, the field that God can like show its presence gets smaller and smaller. So through that, I think that you would have to create the proof, and I don't have the burden of proof to prove that God exists.
No,
Would
obviously.
you agree with that? All right, fair enough.
Yeah, I'm the one making the claim, so I would have to justify it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all right, so real quickly with Occam's razor, like Occam's razor, I don't just because like the idea that the simple Occam's razor is that it's not the necessarily the truth, but it's usually the simplest answer is like most likely the answer. It's not, but that's not necessary or absolute. So like I don't think Occam's razor doesn't have like any logical weight as to whether gods exist or not. Just because you could say like one explanation is simpler than another. Now getting into the argument here, let me share my screen on the TikTok just so that people can follow. I'll run you through the premises. Did you want to write down the premises?
I have my notes up, so it's fine.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Premise 1, things in the universe are in motion. Yeah. I'll wait for you to finish writing each one just so you can have it all written down. Premise 2 is if something is in motion, then it must be put in motion by another since it can't move itself.
Okay. Motion would be like physical, like moving.
Did you want me to like define any terms, or you following?
Yeah,
something?
like when you mean motion, like physical
Yeah.
motion. Like
No,
it's
I
moving.
mean motion would be defined as the move from a state of potential to actual. Potential is defined as something has the capacity to become something else, but is not yet that thing. And actuality is something is already that thing or state, or something that already is what it is potentially able to be.
Okay.
All right. And then conclusion 1 is things in the universe must have been put into motion by another. I'll repeat that one more time because you're kind of out of that. Or did you hear that?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. The conclusion 1 was things in the universe must have been put into motion by another.
Okay.
Premise 3 is if there is a per se causal chain of movers and it cannot regress infinitely, then there must be a first mover that isn't moved by anything else.
Okay.
Premise
don't agree with
conclusion 2 is therefore there must be a first mover that isn't moved by anything else.
I don't agree with that.
Okay. So are you okay? So far, like, do you agree with premise 1, 2, and 3?
I agree with 1 and 2. 3, where there is something that's like at the very start, I don't agree with that. Because, I mean, physics show us like again and again, once we go back like far enough into the Big Bang, like our ideas of physics or how the world around us, it's all like contained within physics, right? Physics itself breaks down, and a big part of physics is like how time works, right? And without a basis of time, right? Like for example, causal like links that would be fall under time, and physics, a large part of physics is time. And since physics itself breaks down pre-Big Bang, it's kind of really like a almost like a non like you can't really make that point that you can't speak about time when time itself doesn't work pre-Big Bang.
Yeah. So this doesn't involve time, like time necessarily, like whether you affirm time's infinite or temporal or whatever. It doesn't really matter for the sake of this argument. It's just specifically on affirming that within a per se causal chain, there would need to be a first mover that has X, Y, and Z attributes, i.e. being like pure act, conscious, etc. Right. Big Bang and time and whether it's infinite or isn't infinite, has a start or whatever, it doesn't affect or really matter when it comes to the argumentation itself.
Okay, just continue your premises. We'll get back to that if I think of a better way to frame my answer.
Yeah. Okay, and then that conclusion 2, just repeat it, was therefore there must be a first mover that isn't moved by anything else.
Okay.
Premise 4 is whatever is not moved by another must have no potentiality.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so it's in reference to the first mover. It's basically saying that if you are the first mover, in order to be the first mover, you can't have any potentiality.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
Okay. And then conclusion 3 is therefore the first mover is pure act.
What does it mean to be pure act?
To be pure act means you have no potential at all. You're fully actualized. So that would mean there's no room to improve or grow, right? It's like the pinnacle. So that would include being like omnipotent, omniscient, like perfect, etc. Those types of things.
I'm not sure if I agree with that. You're saying that if something can't be actualized further, it's at the pinnacle of what it can be. Why does
I'm saying if it has no potential at all, then it's the pinnacle of what it could be. Like potential, not every potential needs to be actualized or is going to be actualized, right? Like for example, we have the potential to become like all-knowing, right? But we're not going to have that potential actualized. But it's still in the potential that does exist. In order to have no potentiality at all, that means there would be nothing that you have unfulfilled capacity to improve on. So like, for example, if let's just take the realm of like my knowledge and IQ. If I had no more potentiality in that realm, I would have the max amount of IQ. So being like all-knowing, right? Like there's no improvement past that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that just I'm having a little bit of trouble like getting this around my head. So since it came from it, right, and all other everything else in reality in the universe came from its potentiality, it has to contain all the potentiality that comes from in front of it?
No. What I'm saying is like the first mover can't have any potentiality within itself, meaning like room to improve, etc. I can explain why that has to be the case if you would
Yeah,
like.
I do.
Yeah, so when it comes to potentiality, if something has potential, then it has the ability to change and those types of things. But um, the main reason as to why they couldn't have potentialities because like as I affirmed earlier, there can't be an infinite regress within a per se causal chain. So there has to be a starting point. If there was potentiality within the first mover, then there would need to be an explanation and grounding as to why it is that way. Qua, for example, what we call PSR, the principle of sufficient reasoning, which I can explain what that is if you need me to.
No, I got it. I think
Okay,
you can
yeah.
totally make it.
Yeah, so if it, with that being said, if it had potentiality, then with PSR, there would need to be an explanation and grounding as to why it has that potentiality. And since there can't be an infinite regress of these explanations, that means there would have to ultimately be like a starting point or final explanation that doesn't have any potentiality, doesn't have that would be pure acts. Otherwise, if it had any potentiality, once again, it would need an explanation, right? So that ultimately that would be the first mover.
Okay. Sure. Continue. So your first mover is maximally everything?
Yeah.
Okay. Why wouldn't it be maximally evil?
Maximally what?
Evil.
Evil? Yeah, so we would affirm that it couldn't be maximally evil because evil is a privation of good. So like even linguistically, right? We would say that evil's ontologically inferior. So would be, for example, not having consciousness would be ontologically inferior because you are lacking. It's like a lack of something. For example, let's say consciousness. Being non-conscious means you don't have will and intellect and rational mind and those types of things, right? So non-consciousness would be ontologically inferior because non-consciousness is the lacking of those things. Same way with evil, it's a privation of good.
If so, here's the thing, right? So say I'm standing here, you're standing across the room, right? If I punch you in the face, that's an evil action, right? If I don't do anything, that's neutral. Whereas if I give you $1, that'd be a good action, right? Why would evil be a privation of good when you have the entire spectrum and it's all actions you can make? You see what I mean? Like, give me an example where how I just don't understand how evil would be a privation of good, or how lacking good would make you evil. Because you can lack good and just be neutral. I can lack good and not punch you in the face. I would just stand there and look at you.
Yeah. So like when you're asking for specifically when you're asking this, I'm what would be, like, you're just wanting like an objective grounding and reasoning as to why evil is just a privation of good?
No, I'm saying that I don't agree with the idea that evil is a privation of good because of the aforementioned idea. Man, you can like respond to that however you see fit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So when it comes to this is evil being the privation of good, it's more like, to start off, it's more of a definitionally that's the case. For example, like the way evil is identified definitionally is that it's a bad or wrong, right? It's not a positive reality, right? It's
I think
negative,
that's
right?
like linguistics rather than like anything else. I just like that's like saying that evil is wrong and it's not right. It's like that's like it's just the way language works. It's not saying that inherently evil is the absence of good, because like I showed in the previous example, you can have not evil and not good and just neutral.
Uh, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the first reasoning obviously is because linguistically, that's how evil is understood, defined, and those types of things. Um, but when it comes to like what it means to count, like even within nature and how we understand what it means to be counted as good, like for example, let's take an eye, and
Mhm.
a good eye is just in terms of like actually being able to see, right? An eye is ordered towards seeing, right? So when it's being counted as good, it's actually just fulfilling the end proper to its nature, or it's just its purpose, right? Or what it's meant to be doing. Versus like an evil or a bad would be an eye that's ordered to see, not seeing, or not
Okay.
working as well, which is a like ontological lacking. It's so evil would be, it's not an introduction to like a positive principle or a fulfillment, but it's like an absence or corruption or disorder of something, i.e., for example, the corruption of an eye's functioning sight, of functioning to see, or the absence of that eye being able to see, and those types of things.
Okay. First of all, corruption and evil aren't the same thing. And to your first point about the eye, I don't think me saying that your eye is it's a good eye isn't a question about the eye's morality. It's a question of does that eye work or not. It's just words can be used to describe multiple things. It's not a moral like judgment. It's a does it work or not judgment, right? And
Mhm.
similarly, like if I say your eye is evil, right? That doesn't mean your eye doesn't work. It doesn't mean anything because people don't use evil to describe a lack of or non. That's not what evil means. Evil is if I said you're like that's not a term that people use exactly for the reason because evil doesn't mean a lack of or without.
Yeah, so you're just challenging the notion that evil doesn't, like, linguistically doesn't mean a lack of or privation?
Yeah, because evil can be something. It can be an action that you take. You can have an evil action, have evil motives. If evil was a privation of it, you can't do something for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that are not inherently evil, but do actions for evil. Where if I'm trying to get revenge, I know that this is an evil action because I want to inflict harm on you. That's an addition. That's not a subtraction. And like before, if I said your eye is a good eye, again, it's not a question of that eye's morality, or it's not. I'm not judging your eye's morality. I'm judging whether or not that eye works or not. It's like a linguistic thing. That's not a completely outside of the scope of our discussion.
Yeah, even when it comes to those types of things, right? Like when it comes to metaphysically, which we're talking about, like the metaphysical understanding, it obviously evil is defined as being like a lack, and good is being identified as like a positive or order, perfection, actuality, etc. But if it were the other way, right, it would cause problems in when it comes to a pure act being. So let's say it was actually the opposite, and good was the privation of evil, and something like fully actual was just like the worst
Yeah.
at everything, right? Like perfectly morally evil, those types of things. A I guess you could say that perfection would then be defined as like the lack of anything good or those types of things. But then you arise into problems as to if it is the opposite of all powerful, being like literally no power and no omnipotence, all this other stuff, then that means that the first mover wouldn't actually be wouldn't satisfy its cause, because it would not be able to do anything. It wouldn't even be able to be the first mover. So it wouldn't work out if pure acts meant the opposites. Secondly, you also have aspects of, for example, Like ultimately, that's just what it's grounded upon. If it was the other way around, and a pure act being was actually the opposite, right? It would be have no power, no knowledge, no conscience, etc. It couldn't satisfy for it wouldn't be able to satisfy what's necessary for to be the first mover. It wouldn't be able to bring things into act because it'd be the exact opposite. It'd be something that's, for example, we would determine for like actualities being the privation of potentia, right? So it'd be the other way around. Potentia is just the privation of actuality. Potentia is a higher or highly ordered state. It wouldn't even exist, right? To exist is to be an act. So it would be perfectly but potential. It wouldn't even exist. And even if we didn't do that with the potential and actual, if it was pure act and pure act just meant the opposite, it wouldn't be able to satisfy what's necessary for a first mover because it wouldn't be able to do anything because it has literally no power, no knowledge, nothing like that. It's just so like to be pure act couldn't be the other way around because it would be impossible for the first mover to do anything. It wouldn't satisfy what's necessary.
Okay, so I think my problem with that is I'm not saying that what if it was the opposite. I'm not saying that I'm not like agreeing to your premise and then seeing what would the opposite be. I'm saying that as we're describing this like perfect being in every single sense, you get to this crossroad of would this being be maximally good or maximally evil. I'm okay with everything else you described. I'm okay with omniscient, all powerful. I'm okay with everything else. But then why would this being, specifically after we described everything, why would it be absolutely good when it can be absolutely evil?
Okay, so then you're like then it wouldn't like it wouldn't logically follow with your linguistics here. If you're affirming then that like for example, it's good is just a privation of evil for all this other stuff, and that's why it can be like all powerful and all this other things. But then when it comes to morality, it's actually the opposite. It wouldn't follow.
Well, I don't think in reality that there is an all-powerful God that's all evil. I'm just saying this to show a issue with the idea that such a being can exist to begin with, because you can't be maximally perfect, because there are things that are completely on one side or on the other, and it's not a privation of anything. It's a choice you have to make. You can't be maximally everything, because some ideas are contrary to each other. Morality being one of them.
All right. Yeah. So I mean, once again, like taking that standpoint, then you're kind of using contradictory terms here, in the sense that for once again everything, goodness would be the privation of evil for all the other attributes except morality, which then I question the logic of whether that like if that even logically follows, but also it kind of puts like for example it makes it so that morality is kind of like a disconnection between all the other modes of being and what it means to have a rational nature and those types of things.
Sure, I'm okay with that.
And yeah,
an all-powerful being wouldn't have morality. If one exists, it wouldn't have any morality. I feel like I haven't, with all respect, I don't think I've gotten like a good response to my answer. Like, why wouldn't it be maximally evil?
yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, you're like flip-flopping terms there. In one way you're using it to mean that it's good as privation of evil for all this other stuff when it comes to pure act, but then specifically for morality, it's actually the opposite way. Which
What do you mean good is a privation of evil for all other acts?
yeah, so for as I explained before, like as we understood good and evil as it relates to like being all powerful and those types of things, evil would fall into the categories of privation, so lacks of things, right? So if you were to affirm, for example, as like so the lack of all powerful, if it was the other way around, obviously as I explained before, it would be no power at all, right? And then good would be the positives or the fulfillments or the perfections, right? So that would be like being all powerful, right? So you're saying here is that it is all powerful, it is all knowing, it is all like all these maximum perfections and goods, but then for this specific thing being morality, it's actually the other way around, where evil, being perfectly like morally evil, is the actual the like the perfection, and
Okay.
it's really evil is the good's the privation of evil, which just flip-flops these terms, and I would say makes it inconsistent with the way it's being used previously.
Okay, I think I got your point a little bit better. So I think where we disagree is you're using the word good and you're describing it to all positive actions. Positive doesn't mean like morally positive. Positive means like an addition, right? So every single action that you describe as good is an addition. That's a description that you're giving, right? That's not something that people use. I think that's a definition you're giving. I'm fine with you giving that definition, but you're using that definition you gave, and then you're morphing it into also being morally good. But like I described before, good isn't a provision of evil, or evil isn't a provision of good, because they're not. It's not like one or the other. It's not like evil is a lack of good, like I gave the example before, right? You're using that word good to show a positive for every other thing. That's fine, but when we're going to morality, that's not how it works, because good in that situation, that word good means something specific. That means, like, you know what good is, morally good. And then morally evil would be, like I showed before, like an action that you can take, or a bunch of other things, right? So you're using a word, you're defining it through one thing, and then using that same definition to help your point, even though that's not like a definition that people use. You see what I mean? That's
So
kind of
okay, so you're really
explains.
your objection is to me like saying pointing out like with these attributes it's this way, and then specifically your position with morality, I'm pointing out that it's the opposite, and you're saying like I'm basically taking definition as it relates to like all powerful and then applying it to morality.
Sort of. I'm saying that the idea that something, like for example, all powerfulness is a good thing, I don't agree with that idea, because if you're using good as a morality judgment, why is it good to be all powerful? It's a neutral thing. Why is it good to be omniscient? It's a neutral thing. You can be omniscient and evil, and you can be omniscient and good. And then you're using that definition, that morality judgment of omniscience is good, all powerfulness is good, and then you're putting that into the morality question, which, like, either you have to like bite the bullet. Like, are you making a moral judgment when you're saying that an omniscient being is good, or you know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I would say like obviously obviously there's problems in like linguistically like flip flopping them when it comes to morality. Like for example, with cruelty, let's take cruelty for example. Cruelty is something that makes sense as like insofar as compassion existing. If you were to flip the roles here, then compassion would just be the absence of cruelty. It kind of linguistically messes with the meaning of cruelty. But even besides that, as, when you're referring to, when it comes to like flipping these definitions, like I'm curious as to why, for example, it would for these metaphysical categories such as like power, etc., why it would be good is evil is the privation of good, and but then for morality it's the opposite way. Like, are you then affirming that it's what like the metaphysical categories aren't coherent in the sense of like what's which side is like the privation?
I'm not sure I understand your point at all. I don't.
Okay, so like let's say when we're talking about what a pure act being is and the attributes it has, those would be like metaphysical categories. That's being like how powerful you are, how much knowledge you have, those types of things, right? And we see, for example, with the scenario you're bringing up, where it's understood as evil being the privation of good, qua insofar as like it being all knowing, consciousness, all these other aspects. But then when we reach to one of the metaphysical categories being like morality, it's actually the other way around, right? So
Yeah, I thought I already answered this. It's because the idea of omniscience being good is not the same. It First of all, I don't agree with that idea. If you're saying you're not, hold on. Okay, let's. What do you mean? What does the word good mean to you?
yeah, so as I said before, when we understand good within the reference like this specific scenario, pure act, good would be like the perfections of things, or the positive. So, for example, being all powerful would be a perfection of
Okay.
power, and that would be good. And being not being all powerful or having no power would be the lack of this good, the lack of a positive attribute would actually be the negation or evil.
Okay. So here's the thing, right? Say I'm okay with that term of good meaning positive, right? So a all act being, I've never heard of this term before, but an all act being would have the positive in every single setting, right? Positively omniscient, maximally positively omnipotent, right? So in that term, positive means to have, right? Kind of. In your definition of good is like kind of to have, right? So then when we come to morality, that word good doesn't mean morally good anymore. Because like I said before, there's no in a moral sense, evil is not a pervasion of good. They're just a spectrum that are all equally not a pervasion of anything. It's just a spectrum, right? So when you have that term good as in positive, that word doesn't work in a spectrum where everything is equally like actionable, right? I can equally make an all evil action versus a neutrally evil action versus a neutral action versus a neutrally good, so on and so forth, right? That word positive, when you use that word good as positive, doesn't work in that moral sense. Because therefore, like a pure act being can't exist because it can't be maximally positive in every single sense when it comes to like a moral sense. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, so I would say like I think the big problem with it is like you would basically just be flipping the terms in the sense of like evil is actually the perfection of actuality and good would be the imperfection or lack of actuality, right? Which then
Wait,
just means that like as we understand it, as we understand good would then just be evil. So it's just like okay, so what we call good would correspond to the fullness of actuality, the realization of a thing according to its nature. What we call evil, right now is always like arises as a lack or corruption in some actuality or a lack of good, right? For example, a disease would be a failure in your body's natural, how your body functions, right?
wait, I don't agree with that at all.
Well, no, I'm
Even
just saying from like from my worldview. So if you
okay,
were to make evil the primary reality, then evil would then become the fully actual would the fullness of actuality would correspond to evil, because
mhm,
it's flipping. But and obviously a fully actual evil would then have no potentiality, no lack, and no evil by very nature. But then goodness would just be consist of like the lack or disorder um relative to evil, right? You're
well,
what so like the second you say that evil is the fully actual, you're just removing what makes it evil. So what I mean by that is like let's take this what we're defining as good and we're defining as evil, and then
mhm,
just flip the words themselves, but the meanings still stay the same, right?
okay.
That's just
So
essentially what you're doing.
you see that actually, like I can give you a perfect a response to that. So within your worldview, right? You agree that evil exists within our world, right?
You said what?
Evil exists within our world, right? You would agree with
Yeah.
that. So, but your God is all good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So similarly, an all evil God, honestly, the world would look exactly like it is because through your worldview, good exists because of evil, right? Like good wouldn't mean anything if evil didn't exist, right? So similarly, there would be probably some good in an all evil God, but you know, there would be some good to contrast that evil. Honestly, if anything, this world is probably made by an all evil God because of the relative ratio of good to evil. There's a lot more evil than there is good. There's a lot more suffering than there is happiness. But when you have that contrast, it allows that evil to be a lot more exacerbated.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to answer your question, if there was an all evil God, the world would look pretty similar to where it is right now. Assuming that everything else within the way God works, and which I don't agree with, comes to fruition.
I mean, would you affirm that like ontologically living would like if we go back to like how I'm understanding good and evil, would you affirm that living is better, like dying is bad and living is good?
I think death is neutral. I think death can be bad when it causes grief to other people.
Okay,
But I think
okay, so then how about this? Would you affirm that murdering someone is bad and not murdering someone is good?
I think murdering someone is bad. I think not murdering someone is neutral. Because you're not doing a good action by not killing someone. You're just not doing an action.
Well, and okay, so if if the terms are flipped, if killing someone is evil, right? And that's the
Right.
perfection, and good is just the privation of evil, then
Okay.
that would mean that not killing someone would then be the bad. It would be bad
Well,
not to murder someone.
I don't think
It
that
couldn't be
good is
the idea of it being neutral wouldn't follow if you're flipping the terms.
Well, I'm not flipping the
Because
terms.
it's
I don't think
like, so right now, as I understand it, evil is the privation of good. So anything that's like, for example, anything that isn't like like a perfection of good or morally good, etc., would be evil, or anything that lacks goodness would be evil. If we're flipping the terms, where, for example, it's now the more evil, good is the privation of evil, and killing someone is evil, right? So that would be like the perfection within this reality. Then not killing someone would be the privation of that evil, which would then mean it's good, right?
no. And I feel like maybe I haven't described my point well enough. I don't think evil is a privation of good. I don't think good is a privation of evil. I think they just all exist on a spectrum that are all equally actionable. Like you can make an action on every side of that spectrum. Nothing is a privation of anything else. There are good actions, there are neutral actions, there are bad actions.
Well, there would have to be some ontological privation. If there was nothing to determine like what would be positive and what would be negative, then when it comes to like, for example, potency and actuality and those types of things, like they wouldn't have meaning. B, like, so for example, being with when it comes to like what it means to be pure act, right? Like if good and evil are just neutral on a spectrum, and there's no privation at all, then like, for example, what would be all powerful and not being all powerful would have no ontological difference. I mean, there would just arises contradictions there.
Yeah, so I do think that okay, here we go. So an action, the morality thing isn't about it's not an actionable thing, right? There's for morality to exist, it has to have action first, and then it's a label you can put on that action, right? So morality doesn't exist on actionable, or doesn't exist on on that flip-flop, because it doesn't exist as something you do or you don't do. It doesn't exist within the idea that you described before of potentiality, because it's not an action, it's a label, right?
Mhm.
And through that we can see that, like, yeah, sure. And also I don't agree with the idea that this all comes back to my idea that there can't be an all act being, because there are such ideas that are in that spectrum. 3, oh my god, I forgot my point. Did I respond to all your questions, or did I miss something?
Just like repeat what you said one more time.
Okay, so morality isn't a question of actionability, whatever.
Mhm.
It's a label that you put on an action once that action's already done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we go back to the max potential being, or max potentiality being, that being wouldn't be good, would not fall within the action, because potentiality is referring to motion or actions, like you described before.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas morality wouldn't fall within that question of potentiality or actionability, because it's not an action, it's not a potential, it's a label that you place on something. And it's a neutral label that doesn't, it's not a perversion of anything else. It's not a perversion of itself. I mean, there's no good isn't a perversion of evil, even if evil isn't a perversion of good.
Okay. Yeah. So, hey, you do affirm the atheist position, right?
Agnostic would be the better term.
Agnostic. Okay.
I don't think that there is any I don't think there is real evidence of God. I don't like the word agnostic, because people think agnostic means like I just haven't picked out God yet. You know, in all honesty, if I were to be a religious person, it would be Christian, because every other religion is pretty questionable. Like who's that one guy, Lizzie? Dude, my eyes were like I don't know how some people can be so you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So. Okay. So I think I understand fully what you're saying now. So let's say with this pure act being,
Sure.
so we're either good in some aspects, like amount of power, amount of knowledge. These would be examples of evil being the privation of good.
What?
No, okay, so like taking good to in this context to mean like the perfections or positives, and evil being the lacks or the negations, right? I obviously brought up how if you are affirming that, switching the roles and saying evil, good is a privation of evil, then God, that means that the roles would be inversed, right, from what we're at now.
Wait, can I stop you really quickly? I'm not saying that the roles are reversed. I'm saying that there are no roles to begin with.
Yeah, the problem is you affirming that there's no roles just then is just a contradiction.
Why?
If there's no distinguisher between good and evil, right now, like I would affirm the distinguisher between good is like, let's just say good is a positive,
Okay.
evil is a negative. If
Sure.
you then put them on the line, you're affirming that good and evil are both neutral, right? There's not one that's positive, there's not one that's negative, there's not one that's a privation of the other. Then there's no distinguishing factor between either of them, which then rolls into a contradiction of between the distinction of good and evil.
Okay, I can explain that. So we actually see that in reality all the time, right? There are actions that are very, very questionable on both sides. Like say someone got their daughter killed and they kill the guy in return, right? That's a morally ambiguous killing, right? Some people think it's going to be fine. Some people think that it's a bad thing to do, right? Morality, like that, like you described before, there aren't hard lines, right? There are general boundaries of generally these actions are morally good, generally these actions are morally bad, but there's a lot of overlapping gray area. So yeah, like you said, I mean,
So you are affirming that there's like some things that are generally good and some things that are generally bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so then there is a distinction between like good being the positive and evil being the negative here.
Okay, hold on. There is a distinction, yes, but good is not the positive and bad is not the negative. That's
okay. So if good and evil, there's no distinction then between like one being positive or one being a negation or lack or anything like that. Then when you say that in some areas something are morally good and in others some things are like morally bad, or some things are good and some things are bad, there needs to be a distinction between good and bad and what are good and evil and what they mean. If there isn't one, then there's a contradiction there.
Okay, well, we can debate.
There would have to be a distinction. So either like one being a lack and one being the positive or something like that. If there is no distinction and you keep affirming that there's neutral, but then you're also affirming that like in some aspects something like X is good, and some aspects Y is evil, and those types of things, there needs to be a distinction. Otherwise, you violate. It's a contradiction.
So I can give you a specific what do you say like a description of what morally good moral is. You can do it through like utilitarianism, where it's like maximal increase of pleasure and maximal decrease of pain and suffering would be good, whereas opposite vice versa would be evil. That's a distinction that I can give to morality. I don't think everyone has the same sense of morality to begin with, but yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that pain would be the evil, not having pain would be the good.
And having happiness would be the good, and not having happiness would be the evil. Because you can be happy and suffer, and you can be sad and
Okay.
or you can be
Okay, so then that means that good would be the positive and evil would be the negative.
Nope.
Okay, if you're saying that linguistically, if you're saying that having pain or not having pain is good, and having pain is evil or bad, evil is understood in like the general realm of being like a negative or lack of something. Good is understood as being the positive or the perfection or something like that, right?
Yeah.
If you're denying then that good would be the positive, evil would be the negative, then the way you're using the words isn't linguistically valid. Like,
Okay.
you see what I mean?
Yeah. So the way I would respond to that point is, like I said before, I didn't say just suffering. It's also a happiness component. So good would be maximal happiness while minimal suffering, whereas evil would be maximal suffering and minimal good, right? So they are both positives. It's not one's not a negative, one's not a positive. They're both positives, just flipped.
So they're both positives now.
Yeah. Or sure, I guess. I mean, if you define positive as that, I guess. But then like, so would air, I guess, because it's, I don't know, causing something. I think then everything would be positive. Because anything that causes something would be positive.
Okay.
Well, I guess that fits in your definition.
Okay, so then what would good be here? Would good be like a positive or a negative?
Good would be good and an evil would both be positives in your definition of positive as an increase.
All right. So then if they're both positive and there's no distinction between the two, then they're the same thing.
Well, there is a distinction because
What's the distinction?
good would be maximal happiness, minimal suffering. Evil would be minimal happiness, maximal suffering. That's the difference.
Okay, so then evil is would be like the lack of good. Like logically.
No.
So for example, when we say like maximum happiness compared to minimum happiness, good would be the evil would then be the privation of good, because you couldn't have good be the privation of evil, since evil here would be in the means of like the lack of something, or with it being the opposing here to good in the scenario you gave. You can't, if it's the lack of something, it doesn't exist, that like in the sense of like an actual real reality. It's just something missing. For example, like with light and darkness doesn't exist as like a real reality. It's just the lack of light.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it couldn't be the other way around within this scenario, because then if it was, it wouldn't make any sense. Like it wouldn't be intelligible.
Okay, is suffering a thing?
Suffering's a thing.
Yes. So is suffering a positive thing, meaning it exists? Like you can add suffering to someone.
Say that again. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
You add suffering to someone.
Can you add suffering to someone?
Yeah.
Well, I
Makes
would
sense.
understand suffering as being the a negation or evil, meaning
But
like
could
the
you
lack
make
of good.
someone- Is that possible? Can you make someone's life actively worse?
Can you make someone suffer? Yes.
Yeah. So suffer is a positive
No.
because you're adding suffering, no?
No, I would affirm that the way you make someone suffer is by like a privation of good.
Okay, so here's the thing. That's we
pervading
are
or
in
good.
crossroads right now, where this is just like linguistic, like nothing. Because I'm saying that suffering is something you can add, and you're saying
Yeah,
that you're
well,
not
the
adding
words
suffering.
you're using
Hold on,
linguistically,
hold on. Can I
like
just finish my point?
under the realm of like evil and these types of things, they're negations or negatives or lacks of something.
Okay, can I finish my point real quick?
Mm-hmm.
The crossroads we have is if I add something, and I'm saying that I'm adding something, but you're saying no, you're not adding suffering. You're just taking away happiness. We're describing the exact same thing. We're just looking at it from two different point of views. So we can't really go for it.
So the
you're
problem is if
pushing every point.
if you're affirming that they're both positives, right?
Right.
Then there would be no real distinction there. Like
But I just said that.
positive and negative A wouldn't have a distinction. Or I mean there would be no negative. If they're both positives, then like we would be saying essentially that like they would be the same thing. Like the law, the law of identity?
Yeah, A is A.
Yeah, A equals A. If they're both positive, let's say A equals positive, like would you affirm that evil and good here would be equally positive?
Sure.
Okay. If they're both equally positive, good and evil and evil are equally positive, and A equals positive, then according to the law of identity, they would be the exact same.
Okay.
Good and evil would equal each other.
Here's where I disagree with that. Just because two things are the exact same in a single component or a single facet doesn't mean the exact same thing. Like ice and
So then what would be the distinguishing factor between good and evil?
yeah, like I said before, how it relates to suffering and happiness, what it causes upon people.
Okay,
that
so
is
then
negative.
what in the terms of what of positivity, if you are affirming that good and evil are equally positive, then they're in that terms or in that sense, then they are both the same. If they are equally positive, and we're using your distinction here is between like one's like means maximal happiness and the other means like minimal happiness.
Okay, I see your point.
Yeah.
Is omniscience and omnipotence, are they equally positive, or is one more positive than the other?
Oh wait, I didn't hear what you said. Say it again.
Is omnipotence and omniscience, are they equally positive, or is one more positive than the other?
Yeah, so when it comes to, you said omnipotence.
Where's omniscience?
Yeah. Well, there's what do you, there wouldn't
Are they-
be like a, is one better than the other? Like
Positive meaning like, are they both equally a thing?
there's just the equal maximums within their own respects.
Right, so they're both equally positive.
Yeah.
Right. So two things
But there's a distinction in terms of, for example, omnipotence is just in reference to how powerful something is. Omniscience, or let's just say omniscience is in reference to like knowledge, right? How knowledgeable something is, which are distinct categories. Here though, with good and evil, you're both saying they're equally positive, and then saying like, for example, one is the minimal happiness and one is the good, and good would be the maximum of happiness. That doesn't like, if they're both positive, like it doesn't make sense. Minimal, you're removing any meaning and coherence from the wording themselves and the meaning behind like minimal and maximum there.
Why? Well, okay.
Like if we look at like, let's view this mathematically, for example, like minimal would be 0, maximum would be 100, right? If evil is the minimal happiness or the 0%, and good is the maximum happiness or the 100%, evil would be the negation or lack.
Yeah. So I feel
Good
like
would
you
be
said
the
this,
positive or
yeah,
the
you said this
perfection or
part.
maximum. Yeah.
You keep missing the second part of yeah, happiness is a part of it. It's 100 or 0 from you, but it's also suffering, right? Because you can be happy and suffer. You can be not happy and not suffer. Like that's a big part of it.
The suffering, like that's a completely different like context or level to this. or focusing specifically on this happiness thing, if you're affirming that they're both like equally positive and all this other stuff, but then evil, the distinction's evil, for example, when it comes to happiness, is the minimal happiness, good is the maximum of happiness, then there one has to be the negation or lack or
Hold
lesser.
on, hold on. I gave that definition of morally good and morally evil, and you're like focusing on a single part of my definition, and then you
Yes, your example here
finish my
of
point.
what it would look like, what the
Hold on,
distinction would
let me
be,
finish my point.
does not follow.
Okay, the reason it does follow because you keep leaving out the suffering part. I don't know why you said that. That's like a completely part of different discussion. It's a part of my point. Okay, if suffering or maximal evil would be maximal suffering, which is a positive, and minimal good, whereas opposite for good, right? They would both be positives. Also, one quick thing, you said this before. We have to now, we agreed to the point that two things can be maximally positive in the exact same respect, yet still be different, right? We saw that with omniscience versus omnipotence. So, like I said, these two things are different. They have different traits, yet they have one similar aspect, but they can still be different traits, as you agreed to. Okay, two different things, both positive. Yeah, I mean,
Hello?
hello.
Yeah.
Am I cutting out?
No, you're good now.
Okay, I can repeat if you want me to.
Yeah, please do.
So, like you agreed to, something can be maximally positive, right? And two things can be maximally positive that still be distinct different things. You agree on that with omniscience versus omnipotence, that example, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we have good and evil, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
both positives, right? Evil is maximal suffering, minimal good. That's a positive because it has maximal suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Good is maximal evil, or maximal happiness and minimal suffering. That's also a positive. So you have two different positives that are distinct, yet are both positives and
Yeah,
are
so
equally positive.
if you're affirming, yeah,
Wait, can you just agree with that so far? They're
oh,
both
I see what you're saying. If you're
yeah.
affirming that, then they're both positive and they're both equally positive, then that's just like ends up being within the realm of within the realm of them, like in insofar as perfection or value, there's no difference between them, right? We would affirm that then.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. That's exactly why a maximally perfect being can't exist because they're both They're both equally positive.
But then here with the maximum and minimum here, they're both equally positive, but one or equal, like let's say with how we understand good now, like they're both equally good or
They're both
equally
equally
positive.
good. Yes, equally positive.
But okay, so they're both equally good or morally good.
Well,
But then one would be like the positive and one would be the negative here in the
No.
sense of like maximum and minimum. Because if you say that there's no distinction between maximum and minimum like that, then that means maximum and minimum don't really have a coherent meaning then.
wait, what? No, there is a difference between
Yeah,
the
okay,
two.
yes.
Wait, I don't
So
understand
there's a
your point.
difference between maximum and minimum, right?
Yeah.
Maximum would be like would be a positive and minimum would be a negative or lesser, lack. So for example, if we imagine like let's look like a phone battery. Maximum phone battery would be 100%.
Right.
Minimum would be 0%, right?
Right.
Here, sorry, I was trying to find the percent key. Here we would see that minimum is like the negative or lack or lesser of a percent than the maximum, right?
Sure.
Than 100%. Okay.
Yeah.
So then that means that the maximum would be the positive and the minimum would be the negative.
Yeah, I
The
agree
lack.
with that.
Okay. Which would then mean if what's good here, if good within the scenario is being maximum happy and evil means like minimum happiness, then evil would still be the negation or lack.
Dude, I
And
feel like I'm trying to be as respectful as possible. I feel like we've gone over this exact point 5 different times now. Yeah, sure. In terms of pure happiness, just happiness, if nothing but happiness, in only the context of happiness, evil or good would be the negation of evil, only in that happiness. But in terms of the context of suffering, then it's a complete opposite. They're both the negation of each other. There's not one that's above each other or one that's a lack of each other. They
Okay,
both
so
negate each other in those two different senses. And since they both
okay,
negate each
so
other
let's go to the
in the exact
suffering
same
thing
ways,
then.
they're
now.
both equal.
Okay, so if we've determined that good here is the maximum happiness, and that's like good being like the perfection or the positive, and the minimum being like the negative or lack, that'd be the evil here within happiness. Let's take suffering. So you're saying that when there's an option of suffering
Mhm.
and non-suffering, or like maximum suffering and minimum suffering.
Yeah.
Maximum suffering, minimum suffering. Okay. So what would good and evil, like which one would be understood as good and which one would evil pertain to?
In terms of good, like positive and negative, or good as in moral?
Well, obviously, a good like
Like your
ob-
definition of good or my definition? Because my definition is just a moral judgment.
yeah. I mean, how would you want to go about it? Like you wanted to use the suffering thing as an explanation here. So like
Well,
how would it pertain for you again?
so the reason I brought up suffering is because, well, one thing to that we understand is suffering and happiness are distinct. They're not like opposites. You can suffer while being happy. You can be like in a prison and still be happy knowing that your daughter is somewhere out there and she's doing good, also suffering in that prison. Whereas you can be super not happy at all, or wait, what would be the opposite be? Or like, you know what I mean? Like those two things aren't opposite to each other. They're just two different traits that happiness or that moral goodness and moral evil have. Okay.
Hmm?
Second of all, the reason I brought up suffering, or the reason it's integral to my definition, is because those, like I said, described before, that's the two parts of moral good. That's the two parts of moral evil, because you need both maximal suffering and minimal happiness to have maximal moral evil, whereas vice versa for happiness.
So focusing on like suffering and non-suffering. Good, you would affirm here, since with what we've seen with happiness, evil would be the negation or lack, and good would be the positive or perfection, right?
Yeah,
When it
within your
comes to
definition.
suffering and non-suffering, how would it, like suffering obviously linguistically is like the lack of flourishing, or I mean that's just like kind of like linguistically how it would be understood. So like which one would good pertain to and evil pertain to here? Would good pertain to suffering or non-suffering?
Would it good pertain to not suffering?
Okay. And
Wait,
evil would
hold
pertain
on.
to suffering.
Yeah, in a moral sense, right?
Okay. So then with what you've shown here, there is, with these examples, we've shown that good is the positive or perfection and evil is the lack or negation. So,
How?
okay, well, let's go back to the happiness. The maximum happiness, or like the most positive, would be good, right? And that's the 100%, right? The minimum happiness or complete lack of happiness, being like 0%, 0% is the lack of something completely, would be evil, negative. So
No.
evil's the lack here, and good is the like perfection or max.
Nah, man. I feel like this is the same thing I was talking about before. No, that's not how that works. It's not only a question of happiness; it's also a question of suffering. Like I described before, they're not like you don't have. If you increase happiness, doesn't mean you automatically decrease suffering.
Well, I would say that suffering would affect happiness.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It affects each other, sure, but it's not the same thing. It's not like two sides of a coin. Okay, suffering is its own distinct thing. Happiness is its own distinct things. Maximal evil will be maximal suffering. It's not just a question about happiness. Yeah, sure. In terms, like I said before, in terms of just happiness, more good morally good would be a positive. But that's only in terms of a context of happiness. When we go into suffering as well, which is equally positive, then it becomes equal because they just cancel each other out. So they are both equally positive. I thought we agreed on this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Here.
You want to do like final points? I have to go right now. And like,
If you have to go, you can go. Feel free to leave, bro.
all right,
Okay.
see you, man.
See you. Okay. I don't know. It's. I'm just having a hard time like comprehending because when you're. Okay, hold up. When you're. Oh, my viewers aren't lining up. Okay, when you're talking about this topic, like obviously linguistically, good is the positive and evil is the lack, and those types of stuff. So it's already hard to comprehend it this way because it's like just definitionally contradictory to say that good and evil are equally positive if we're using evil as a negation or lack and good's like the positive. The same thing is like, for example, like if you imagine debating someone and let's say instead of using the word Trinity, they're using the word like gobble XY, like just a bunch of random crap, right? This is how we're now referring to Trinity, right? It adds like an unnecessary layer of confusion, right? When we're bringing up a topic where inherently the definition of good and definition of evil, good is the positive and then evil is the negation, negative or lack, right? I.e. being the lack of good, right? It's hard to even debate it in a sense where like that doesn't actually mean what it means. But then at the same time, in other respects, it does, right? Like, it's like kind of like randomly picking and choosing when this definition applies. Like, for example, here with the happiness thing. Here with the suffering thing, it works. Like he said, so why did I write suffering? Like here he's affirming that like suffering is like the lack of flourishing. So non-suffering would be good since evil is the lack or negation. Suffering would be the evil here. This is all consistent with good being the positive and evil being the privation or lack of good. But then he's saying this, but then arguing that this actually doesn't conclude here, which just doesn't make sense at all. There's another way to argue this. I will add this to the doc. I need to like flesh this out more than like off stream on this specific explanation that I have in mind. Just because I want to like optimize it, but there is an argument in which like metaphysically, you know how he said that, for example, good would be like the perfection and like max, right? And then evil would be the lack of good, right? And this would apply to like, for example, how powerful, how knowledgeable, consciousness, etc. Like these, he's applying. This is the case within like these certain aspects of a pure act being, right? So he's affirming this, but then specifically for one of the other aspects, which would be morality, it's the other way around, where now like evil is the perfection and max, and good is the lack of evil or the privation, right? It flips, right? There's an argument in which you can say that these metaphysical categories, you can't have this flip. Because and if you make that argument, if you like coherently lay it out, then that means that he can't argue the opposition anymore, because then that means he would also have to affirm that it's the evil and good are flipped here, which then means that the first cause has no power, no knowledge, is non-conscious, etc. Which then like according to Prince, you don't even need that. just taking the all powerfulness part, since it literally has no power, it couldn't even be the first mover. So the flip flop here is just logically impossible. But for me to make that, I need to like coherently lay it out.
All right, so hey, I would like to prove you that I do not really understand like Christianism. I don't know how to say. I'm really sorry,
Okay.
but it just doesn't make sense. So can I talk and like say why it doesn't make any sense or anything?
Yeah.
Okay, so starting off, we're gonna go ahead and so y'all think that Jesus is God. So how can God how was he God even though he was like in Mary's her stomach? And how did people worship him or anything like when he was
Yeah,
when Mary
like
was
for example,
pregnant
I
with
think it's
him?
John 20:28. He was giving glory like throughout the Bible, but like for example, Thomas called him my Lord, my God, and he says, "Now that you've seen, do you believe?" And blessed are those who have not seen and still believe, like John 20:28. But yeah. So as for how he's God within Mary's womb, Christ was a hypostatic union, meaning he had two natures: a human nature and a divine nature.
So he was human or
Yeah, so he was fully human and he was also fully God. So,
oh,
with that, and these two natures are united into the one person. So the divine nature is like the one being a God. Possessing the divine nature is what makes him God. That's what God is. Human nature is what a human is, right? That's how he's a human, right? So he fully possesses the divine and human nature. So he's living a fully human reality and also still maintaining this the idea him being fully God. So that's how he's able to, for example, be in Mary's womb, and those types of things.
and I have another question. So most of y'all think that is Father also the God?
Yeah, we affirm that the Father's God. Yeah.
So there's two God.
No. So the reason it's not two gods is because this divine nature, also we call it the ousia. This is the one being of God. It's one being.
Yeah,
The
it
same
doesn't
way.
make any sense.
Yeah,
You
I'll
I
explain.
asked you if there's another God, and you said, yeah, there is the Father, but it just doesn't
No,
make
okay.
any
So
sense.
we
That just
affirm
proves
that there's
that you
three
know
hypostases.
whatever you're saying. But yeah.
Yeah, so there's three hypostases or persons within the Trinity, right? That you're pointing out the plurality within the persons. That's where like the triune aspect of the word Trinity comes from. And then the unity aspect of it is the fact that there's one being of God, right? The same way like, oh, what? Okay. W argument right there. What up, Nero?
Hello.
What you want to talk about?
I'm an atheist. You say you can prove God easily.
Yeah, I got you. I'll renew to the premises. Did you want to write these down, by the way?
No, I don't have anything to write stuff down on at the moment.
It's a variant of the argument of motion. I don't know if you're familiar with the argument of motion.
Oh yeah, I think it's horrible.
Yeah. I don't think it proves God that well either. That's why I changed it pretty much entirely. There's only one premise that's the same. Premise 1, things in the universe are in motion. And premise 2, if something is in motion, then it must be put in motion by another.
Let's go to premise 1 right
Yeah.
there. What do you mean by in motion?
Motion would be defined as the move from a state of potential to actual.
What are you defining as potential and actual?
Potential is means that something has the capacity to become something else, but is not yet that thing. Actuality would be defined as like something that already is what it is potentially able to be.
I guess okay. So, when you say it has the capacity to be something different, are you saying that also applies if it only has one potential other thing it could become?
If it even has just one potential, like other potential it could become, then yeah, there would still be potential.
Okay, so this is just basically saying time progresses. And things change over time is basically what this premise is. Things change over time.
I mean, if you define time as like change, I guess you could, and you're using the same
Time is the
definition.
progression of effects. Time is the progression of events.
If you want to define time that way, then sure.
Yeah. So
This would happen.
it sounds like you're basically just saying change over time. Identity change over time.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily. It doesn't necessarily, like, for example, if we're understanding time as like second, minutes, hours, and that sort of sense, it doesn't have to be like something that's done within a specific period of time. It could be, but it's logically possible that it could be done instantaneously. But if you're just defining time specifically as the progression of events or change, then, and change being like the same definition as I gave for motion, then yeah.
How would something change identity states instantaneously? Wouldn't that
I
entail
mean,
a
I'm just saying it's logically possible. Like,
no, that's
it's
what
not
I'm saying. It's
illogical.
not. That would entail a contradiction.
Oh, what would the contradiction be?
Because it would both be A and B.
What do you mean it'd both be A and B? Like, what would A
A's,
and B be?
So if it's changing states, A is not B. We're saying because they're different identities, it changes from one thing to the other. A is not B, and then you're also saying A is the same as B.
Okay, wait. How would I be saying that A is the same as B if I'm saying that it's logically possible for something to move from potential to actuality instantaneously?
Because that's when you say it's instantaneous. If it's, are you saying that there's still time separating it, even if it happens in a moment that it switches over? So you're still saying like there's a time that it's A.
I'm
And there's a
saying
time
if
that
we're
it's B?
understanding time in this scenario in reference to like seconds, minutes, milliseconds, it's logically possible it could be done instantaneously. But if we're understanding time as like change or just a progression in events, then no.
So
It would be done in time.
yeah, it would be done in time. Okay, so this is still over time.
If you define it as time as like a change or the progression of events, then it'd be done in time.
Okay, so stuff that has a before state and an after state within time.
When you say within time, like
within time just means that being within time means you're capable of having a before and after state. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So things change over time. Okay, that's fine. Premise one.
Having before and after. All right, I'm just writing that down. Yeah, so premise one is things in the universe are in motion. Premise two is if something is in motion, then it must be put in motion by another since it can't move itself. Conclusion one is things in the universe must have been put into motion by another. Premise three is if there is a per se causal chain of movers and it cannot progress infinitely, then there must be a first mover that isn't moved by anything else.
Yeah, that's where that one falls apart.
Okay, how so?
Because it presupposes the A theory of time.
How does this presuppose A theory of time?
Because when you say that it's that, what was the phrase that you used? I forget exactly. Set of causes.
Like reread the premise, like what I said.
Yes. Sorry.
If there is a per se causal chain of movers and it cannot regress infinitely.
Per se chain assumes A theory of time.
How so?
Because A theory is like presentism. It's that time is actually moving forward. While B theory is block theory, that all points of time are actually real. At like in the same way, without the previous points in time becoming unreal once you
with B theory of time, per se causal chains can still exist. A per se causal chain is like a series of causes where each member depends immediately and continuously on the one before it for its causal power or existence. Within B theory of time, this would be if you picked any period, let's say like you say like member Y is immediately and continuously dependent on X within a B theory set of time, and all of time is equally real. If you pick any point or period within B theory of time, within that timeline, in that point of period, it's still dependent immediately and continuously on X to in order for it to have its causal power. and to be
No, because that only actually applies under presentism. Because if all points in time are real at the same time, the later points in time are not dependent on the previous ones in the capacity that you're referencing.
Say that one more time.
Because what you're posing there requires presentism, because under presentism, that's what you're sort of like saying, where this thing happens, and then because that thing exists, it creates this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. That's A theory of time. B theory of time poses that they're all real without any need for like the previous one to enable the other one to exist. That's just what B theory of time is. By its nature of what B theory of time is, that concept just is not applicable, period.
Yeah, I still don't. I still don't. I just still don't see how it's not possible within like B theory of time for a per se causal chain to exist, though.
Because that's just like the definition of what B theory of time is. So like the main thing that suggests B theory of time is true is general relativity. The fact that you can have things like warping of space-time and time being experienced differently by different people means that you could have a situation where people are like so far in the future, not so far in the future, and then as soon in the relative like comparison between the time of one place to another place would be in different parts of time relative to that. And it requires, and this is like the basis of why B theory is even proposed, and it's like the main reason why generally I think a lot of people assume B theory is probably true over A theory. Like in order to make that make sense, you pose that all those moments in time are equally real. And because of that, like you wouldn't be able to have that later point in time in one place and not in the other place, which leads to that situation where you need that future point in time to be real in the same capacity at the previous point in time in the past. So you can't have all points in time. You need to be able to have future points in time. Basically, you'd need to be able to have future points in time already be real before you get to them. In your experience,
I would say like I would say like within B theory time, with all temporal points existing equally, right? I would say that like with a per se causal chain, it would be understood as like at the cause must at like any point in time, whether it's future, past or present, or whatever you want to say, if it is actual in that point of time, to be sustained in that moment by a previous cause or member on the chain that's already actual.
Right, but that's the problem you run into, is that with B theory, it's equally real. The future is equally real as the present. So you can't have the present determine what the future is going to be if the future is already real. It's basically just removing the it's still
it would be like, let's say like
you just remove that per se chain. That per se chain is just not applicable anymore. Now, it's perfectly possible A theory is correct and you have an argument here, but that's like the thing that you need to overcome.
B theory of time would be like, let's say, for example, like let's say we have A theory of time and there's a eternal being that moves through all the time, right? And it's like a video game, right, where all that's saved, and then that entire lifespan, that timeline that they went through goes into B theory, where past, present, and future are all equally real, and they've already happened, right? Or like they were just all equally real. So things that happen, as I guess as we experience within the present, let's say
well, the thing, like, I wouldn't object to the concept that like a first cause could exist within block theory. I'm not actually objecting to that. I'm objecting to the assertion that it's a necessity, because you don't have because it's equally real in the future means that the previous moments aren't dependent on the future moments aren't dependent on the present in that capacity.
Yeah, well, I guess
they
in some sense, but like for example, if for let's say at this present point I plant a seed, and if in an equally real future that seed is already a tree, right? If I in order for that tree to even exist, it's dependent on me planting that seed at that present time. Now, all
right, but
past,
that
present, future are all equally real. So it's like pretty much I guess you could say like there was like no free will in it, in the sense that like it would just happen by necessity because the future is equally real, and that's how the future carried out.
right, but your comparison there, your analogy there, only is applicable to that slice of the block. It's not applicable to all of time completely.
So when you say it's like only applicable to that slice of the block, what do you mean by that?
Right, because how you go about it, you're basically presupposing a starting point. Like, and I'm not, like, again, I'm
What
not
do
even
you mean
saying
like presupposing a starting point?
so. It's the difference between infinite regress being possible and not being possible.
Mhm.
Like, if the ontological realness of those moments aren't based on the previous moment because they're all real at the same time, that means that they can exist independent of the previous moment. Yes, they'll be influenced by the previous moment, but they aren't dependent on it. So when you take that slice, all you're doing is presupposing a starting point and going from there and acknowledging that things, that the progression of events, they influence one another. But you could also say that maybe it influences it backwards in some capacity. Maybe existence has like the opposite. Maybe you could travel through the block backwards, and it would look like the earlier points in time
Yeah.
are reliant on the future points in time, and that's just because you're experiencing it through that method. But it doesn't make them actually reliant on it.
Yeah. Well, I would say like it's like you could imagine it as past, present, future being in, or let's just say present and future are being in perfect harmony. Like if since the future is equally real and this tree did exist, that means that at that present time it was absolutely true that I was going to plant that seed. Like it's not like I could have
But that's-
chosen not to, because the
but that's
future is
a-
equally real. It's already realized.
But that's a theory. There is no such thing there's no such thing as being at that time. You're just experiencing that slice of the block.
Yeah, like the slice of the block I'm experiencing, which I like from our perspective would be like the present. At that slice of time, I planted that seed, and it's already equally in the future, which is already equally real and already exists. That's already a tree, right? It's not like there was an option in which I could have just not planted that seed. Like it was because that slice of the block is already realized. It's already happened. Every
Right.
single
Yeah.
moment.
And
Yeah.
like, yeah, but it removes the dependency for the that moment to exist. Like I said, you could go through the other way, and it could just, from the appearance of traveling through it in the other direction, make it feel like it's presentism in the backwards.
I wouldn't say it
view.
removes the dependency. I would say it like removes like the aspect of like free will or free choice.
Sure. No. Like.
Because
So
like
the point- the reason
dependency
I'm
would
bringing
still
this up,
exist
the
in the sense of like if I didn't plant that seed, the tree wouldn't
So the-
exist.
the
But that
reason it's
option to
important
not
to the
plant
argument-
doesn't exist.
But the reason that it's important specifically, like within what we're discussing at the moment within your argument, is that you offer the idea that this is a necessary type of like per se causal chain. I always forget what it's actually called. That sort of thing. You're offering that it's that type of set when B theory basically makes it not that type of set because they aren't reliant, because they're real. The realness of what they are is no longer reliant on the previous moment, just in the same way that you could travel through it going backwards, and it may appear that it's like, from like an intuitive perspective, it may appear that things are it's being caused the other way around, and causal dependency would just be going backwards relative to what we understand. Like basically the point ultimately is that the premise that infinite regresses are impossible because it needs a starting point, because it's that type of causal chain. It's not actually that type of causal chain under B theory of time, which means that infinite regresses stay possible as not an option.
Yeah, so I would argue that like a per se causal chain can still work within B theory of time, in the sense that, for example, like a per se causal chain, as we understand it, would be I already defined it as like each member being dependent immediately and continuously
but
at each moment in time for its causal power that it is actualized, right? So within
right,
B theory of
that's the
time,
problem.
right?
For
Let's
something,
uh
that's the problem, right? Because you're saying that something happens and then it actualizes the next thing and it actualizes the next thing. To actualize something in the way that you're basically saying it is, that's what makes it real. That's what makes the next thing real. That's basically describing a theory of time. And when you say that it has to be, that chain can work in B theory of time, to me, it sounds like you're saying a contradiction.
Yeah, okay, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is like if like we imagine like a past, present, future thing with this per se causal chain in which within B theory of time, obviously all time's equally real, and let's say at just for the sake of the argumentation, let's say like we have there's point number 1, which is when this is being actualized, point number 2, which is in the future after it's already been actualized, right? Or after that thing came and actualized it. As we experience time, we obviously observe that from our perspective, like a theory of time, in the sense that we see this past, present, future thing occur in which this like X that's already actualizes Y and then continuously actualizes it in order for Y to stay actual. Within B theory of time, each moment, that past, present, future there is all equally real. So and since it, like, let's say a time 3 in the future, since Y is already actualized there, and there's like essentially within B theory of time, there's not really like a free will. This is just like all absolutely the case because the future is already realized and fully real. That would just mean that like in order for Y to be actualized, or to stay actual, it would need X to continue to actualize it through every single point, every single like equally real present moment in time.
Well, I feel like you're still just running into the same problem ultimately, because when you say this thing actualizes the next thing, that implies that the next one isn't real until it's actualized.
What do you mean, like it implies that it isn't real until it's actualized?
I mean, what does actualize even mean?
Yeah, so
like
for example, before
not to make the thing real, because if it's a dependency clause, let's break it down like this. So if we're saying that this is a dependency clause on one time moment to the next time moment, state of affairs of one time moment A to the state of affairs of one time moment B, we're saying that B is dependent on A, and what you're saying is that the potential in A actualizes to B, and that's creates the dependency clause to make B real.
Yeah.
But that would also mean that
in that moment of time,
but that would also mean that state of affairs A has to be already real to switch from potential to actual. Basically, I guess the other way to say
I see
it
what you're
is
saying
that
is like in the sense that like in the
other way to
future A
say-
is already real, right?
Like I would say the other way to phrase it would be the concept of moving from potential to actual, and like in that sense is just no longer a concept. That might be another way to phrase it.
Yeah, I would
Everything's
affirm
already
like
actual.
I would
Everything's
affirm
already
that
actual,
dependency still exists in B theory of time. For example, the seed in the tree. In order for that tree and the equally real future to exist, that seed had to have been planted. I would argue that it can't just come from nothing, right? Now, the act of planting that seed, since that like act is already real, that piece of time already exists, it's absolutely the case, undeniably, like there isn't an option in which that seed couldn't be planted. I'm just saying though, logically, for that tree to exist in the future state of time, it's dependent on that seed being planted in a previous state of time. Now, they're all fully real and already actual pieces of time, so it's absolutely the case that this happens, but it still is dependent.
Well, let's frame it this way. Let's say you had the full block of time. Let's say you're going through it backwards. backwards instead, would the tree then be the dependent thing for the seed? Just
No,
because we're experiencing
yeah, I would
time in
say
one
it's just
direction.
completely illogical to take it as if the tree came before the seed. Because if the
Well, I'm
seed,
not
if the
saying, but
seed is the source in which like the seed being actualized is what creates the tree, it can't be the case. If that's the case, then it can't be the case where it's now the inverse and the tree already existed and the seed before the seed was even planted.
well, then it just sounds like it sounds like you're trying to affirm A theory of time then. Because if we go with B theory of time, the concept of going backwards through the block and seeing the tree go to the seed and then trying to establish the same dependency relationship from tree to seed, you would then be in a situation where it would be dependent both ways and you couldn't have it dependent both ways. Under B theory, that concept of dependency, maybe they influence each other, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're it doesn't have the same dependency like for their existence, for their reality, for the actuality of it. It doesn't have that same dependence that you seem to be suggesting, because if you're saying that this is illogical and not an option, you're basically saying that you think that B theory is illogical.
Well, yeah, so like to say like it can be reversed in a sense, like I would affirm that within B theory there's still like I guess a timeline in the sense where like there's a
Well, it wouldn't be
past, present, future.
reversed. It wouldn't be reversed. It
Yeah.
would just be relative to the observer traveling through it.
Yeah, I'm just saying like going about like if you saying like let's say we flipped it where the future is now the past and the past is now the future with this tree, like that's just completely I would say that's completely illogical. Like
Why?
because if in order for the tree to exist, it had to come from a seed, but you're having it so that time rolls out where the tree came
Isn't that begging
before
the
the
question?
seed that became it was planted, like that it just doesn't like it, I say it wouldn't coherently follow.
But isn't that begging the question? You're saying that it has to go in this direction because you've already decided that the seed has to be the thing that leads to the tree. Why can't it be the tree leads to the seed? Why can't it be the dependent thing going the other way? Just if you view
Well, I
it in
mean,
the
you
opposite
could
direction.
affirm. I guess you could affirm that, like it's the case in which the tree has the potentia to become the seed, and then the tree that potentia gets actualized and it becomes a seed, and like that's the natural process. And then for some reason we
but that's just
purposely we properly observe it the opposite way for some reason. If you want to affirm that, that's fine. It still just doesn't affect the argumentation though.
I mean, it just sounds like you're saying you want A theory of time, and you just
No.
want to, while also saying that B theory of time like A theory of time works in B theory of time somehow.
Once again, like nothing I've said is dependent on like is incompatible with B theory of time.
I mean, I've pointed out several ways that it is, and I don't think you've
Like
addressed it.
for example, like we would affirm that there's still dependencies do exist within B theory of time. It's just that like would you affirm that dependencies do exist?
I mean, they literally couldn't. Not in the way you're describing dependencies.
Do you think things can just come out of nothing or like exist
No,
for no reason?
but
Okay.
well,
Well, you would have to if you're
that's a
affirming no
discussion.
dependencies
That's a
exist.
discussion of necessary and like I think time's necessary. So yes, sort of. I do think that, but things existing for no reason. That's basically saying something's necessary.
Okay, so that's the disagreement.
but-
I'm saying
well,
that even within B theory, dependencies still exist because I affirm that something can't come from nothing. So that's where we're disagreeing on. Okay,
Well,
so
but something coming from nothing assumes time still. Because if there's a state of affairs where there's nothing and then it becomes something, that's still in time.
is there not a past, present, and future or a timeline within B theory?
Yeah, there would be a timeline, but the past, present, future is
Or
just
just
relative.
equally real?
It's relative. Well, they're equally real. Past, present, future is relative to the observer.
Yeah, but there is still a past, present, future.
relative to the observer, which makes it a subjective experience rather than an objective
So
experience.
outside of the observer, there actually isn't any past, present, or future.
Yeah, that's what it means to be all real at the same time.
Okay. So there's no distinction at all, but because there is no past, present, future.
Yeah, if it's all real,
Uh-huh.
if it's all real, independent of one another, then, and that's what like general relativity seems to point towards, then it just all has to be real, independent of each other. And our own observations of presentism would have to be, on that concept, just a subjective experience rather than necessarily the objective reality of how time technically works. It wouldn't be any different than like looking at a timeline and putting a pin in a specific time on the timeline and saying there's past,
Okay.
present.
So
relative
when you
to
say
that.
that there's no past, present, and future time, are you saying that there? Are you referring to like saying like past, present, and future don't refer to ontologically distinct modes of existence?
Well, like past, present, future is relative, right? It's
Yes.
you
Well,
say-
ignoring the subjective experience and how we experience it. I'm just saying like objectively. With B theory time, when you say there's no past, present, and future, are you saying that those terms don't refer to ontologically distinct modes of existence?
I don't know how to define those terms without them being relative to a subjective viewpoint. Because, like, you put a pin at a point in time, that's present. Before it on the timeline's past. Future on the timeline is future. And it's a relative, they're relative descriptions of parts of time relative to the person experiencing that subjective experience. Or I guess if you put like a pin in a timeline, you could say it's relative to whatever object is being placed as the moment in time.
Okay. Oh,
I guess it'd be more like matters of
here the problem
measurement.
is like, I would say that if you affirm like there's no distinction, like those distinctions don't exist at all, yet like would you still affirm that like events are composed of earlier and later?
There would be events relative to each other, right? What
It's like
was it,
how
what's
okay.
what's earlier then? Earlier
Like
than
for
another
example,
event?
if we ignore like all relativity from our perspective, you would be affirming with B theory time that there's no earlier and later. Like even though like let's say we have 3 years, year 1, year 2, year 3, and they're all equally real and equally exist in that present moment, you would you affirm that the year 1 and year
Well,
like year 3 that those there's no like there's no
it wouldn't
past
be
and future there?
It
They're
wouldn't
just
be equally real in the present. I've been trying to avoid that same framing too, of saying you say present moment. Moment is a point in time, so that adds the relativity to it by saying.
I
the
didn't
moment.
say present moment, did I?
You did, but if you did that by accident, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't mean to. What I'm saying is like when you're talking about B theory of time, let's say B theory of time it consists of 3 years, year 1, year 2, year 3. Are you affirming that all like there's no distinction between year 1 and year 3 in the sense like year 1, even though they're all equally real, year 1 happened before year 3?
I mean, you could see it. You'd probably want to like. It would probably be easiest to imagine because B theory is often called block theory as like a dimension on a block. One of the dimensions is time. They all exist at the same time, and where present is just wherever you like place the start of the ruler when you're measuring that dimension on the block. Earlier, later, present, past, future, they're all relative to just wherever you're placing the moment that you're comparing it towards, because all 5 of those terms are comparative terms, wherever you're selecting that moment is. The reason A theory of time is honestly the same in that respect. It just poses that what we're experiencing, like the real present current moment, is the only real one. That's and so it's a quote unquote objective viewpoint. But there's also like growing block theory and stuff, which technically would make the past still real and etc. So that sort of becomes loose there, even under a theory of time.
Okay. So out of curiosity, okay. So with you, I'm so confused. Would you affirm that like there was a past and present, or would you just say that like with the year 1, year 2, year 3, there isn't like year 1 isn't the past and year 3 isn't the future? Like there's no distinction.
Well, okay, so I guess the way I'd frame it is you have year 1, year 2, year 3. You're in year 2. Year 1 is the past, year 3 is the future. You're in year 3. Year 1 is the past, year 2 is the future, and the later parts of year 3 are the future. It's like I don't think there's a way you can frame like any of those concepts without it having to be relative to a moment, right? Like I'd be interested if you think you can explain past, present, future without making it relative to a specific moment.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Same with earlier and later. They're earlier than something, later than something. They're all
So like, could you
they're all
say
right.
that there's past, present, future relative to year 2? That'd be valid within B theory.
Yeah.
But then would that mean that there actually isn't, ignoring, there actually isn't a past and future though? Or would there actually be a past and future relative to 2, but like those past and future are both equally real and exist at this moment?
Yes, they would be equally real and exist. All it means in
Okay.
B theory of time is that it's a later part of the block that's already real. All it means that the past is earlier part of the block relative to the point that you're measuring from. That's already real. That's all that it and never. That's all it really means under that concept. That's why A theory is often called presentism, where it assumes like the current present moment being experienced is the only real one, or like I said, growing block theory, it's the most recent real one. And that's why, and it has a more objective standard to what the present is that is being measured towards for the past, present, future.
Okay. Yeah, I understand now.
B theory, under B theory, you can't have that outside of the subjective observer. And with that all, I'd say, I guess, do you want to go back to the ramifications to the original argument?
Yeah. So with that being said, with the year 1, year 2, year 3 thing, that would mean that like there is still motion and change in the sense, like let's say there's a seed is planted in year 1, and then it becomes a tree in year 2. There's still like motion, being like the move from a state of potential actual that occurs within those temporal slices, and each of those like temporal slices are just all equally real. But in those equally real states, if we were to line them out, like there's an actual like move, right?
But if it's actually real, how does it move from potential to actual if it's already real?
Well, like as we go, if we affirm like relative to like X, there can be a past, present, future, right? Let's take like relative to let's say the middle point, year 1.5, the middle point here. There would be motion relative to that middle point in the sense that in year 1 in the past the seed was planted, and in each of these equally real states of time leading up to the present point of reference, year 1.5, it's like it's growing, it's being actualized, and then it keeps going into the future in equally real moments in time into year 2 when it's fully grown as a tree.
So you use growing, and I think it's like actually a really good point. What you it feels like you're describing growing block theory. Like you're saying the future is equally real, but you're describing things becoming real as it plays out, right? Like when you say things become actual, I don't know a way to actually frame that outside of saying, oh, it's become, because if you're saying their existence is, when you say there's this dependency relationship from becoming potential to actual, when you say there's a dependency relationship, what's actually dependent on it, if not the real, like it being real or not? Because that seems to be like the thing that you're posing this on.
Like this growing block theory thing that you're proposing.
Right. Basically, what I'm saying is like you seem to be posing that it could still work in B theory, but I would
Yeah,
I would
and it
offer
can
that
be
it's still
observed
some,
if we have like relative to like a certain time period, because there's a past, present, and future relative to like whatever point in time on that like we pick. Like for example, like with year 1, year 2, year 3, like relative to this, like year 1.5, between year 1 and year 2, we can observe that this change or motion, this move from a state of potential to actual occurs.
but what does move to a state of potential to actual like mean in the context if the future is already real and actually already actualized?
Yeah, well, it would mean that, like, if the past or when the seed, that moment when it's a seed is equally real and equally realized, and the future when it's already trees equally real and equally realized, right? It would just mean that, like in relative to like year 1.5, right? The future, in order for the future occur, though the points in time, the points in time beforehand that are all equally real had to exist, right? And within those, these things happened in order for, when it comes around to year 3, for this tree to exist. Now, it's
But
it's observed
think
by
we're
us like temporally through like a flow of time, but like within B theory, it'd be like all these points in time are all equally real, but it did occur.
I think like we're getting back to the whole like if it's all equally real, you could by at least conceptually travel it in either direction, and the dependency sort of gets thrown out the window at that point. It does feel as though what you're saying is that it feels like what you're posing would potentially hold up if you took a presupposed starting point and ending point and followed the chain there, but like you sort of have to presuppose a starting point while you
Well, I mean,
don't
you could pick
actually do
any
that
point
starting point.
within like the supposed chain. Like, I don't mean,
Yeah,
like,
but
you're making it
that's
seem
like
as if that's logically invalid with like this
right,
presupposed term.
but that's like the ultimate like problem with saying that B like this dependency relationship exists within B theory, right? Because technically, like the block theory you could go back forever because you can go either direction technically if they're all real. If you believe in an infinite future, you also, with B theory, you're committed to thinking there could be an infinite past. Just in the same way, you could also pose that there's a starting point or
Yeah,
a
I'm
ending
just saying
point,
like,
but it wouldn't it basically like starting point, ending point, infinite future, infinite past, all possible under B theory, but they're all possible, and there isn't like a necessity for one or the other.
yeah, I'm just saying like in
I
order.
actually I probably have to leave soon. It looks like you got another guy that's interested in talking to you.
Okay.
So
Well, I mean, you're the last guest that I'm talking to for the day, but if you have to go, that's
oh,
fine.
that's just because someone was asking. I could stick around for a little bit longer, but
Well, I mean, if you need to go, feel free to leave.
oh, I mean, I just saw someone asking, and I could probably stick around another 10 minutes, but
Yeah, well, I mean, it's up to you whether you want to or not.
I guess so. Ultimately, the point I'm making, right, is that within your original argument, the necessity for you can't have an infinite regress under the theory of time is just not there. You can have an infinite past, you could have an infinite future, you could have a starting point, you could have an ending point. There's a lot of ways the block could actually exist, but there is not a logical necessity for there to be a starting point. Any starting point one, like it may be unintuitive because we experience things via a presentism point of view, so it feels like there should be a starting point per how you're saying. Ultimately, what it means is that like infinite regress backwards, infinite progression going forward. Both of those are still on the table. like
Yeah.
that part of the argument I think
Yeah.
fails under
Well,
B
I'm
theory.
yeah, I'm just holding to the idea that like it relative, like if we go to year one, year two, year three, they're they within these equally real moments in time, like this motion or change had to occur because I would affirm, like for example, PSR can't be violated. If, for example, there's a distinction obviously between year one and year two, they're both equally real and exist, but there's a distinction between them, right? And with the seed being
Sure, they're
planted in year one and then being the tree existing in year two, like there's obvious these are two different states, right, that are equally real, but within that like if we pick a moment in time there, like the middle point, year 1.5 or whatever, relative to that there is still a progression in every single moment of time with it all being equally real in which this motion or change occurred. Because if it didn't, and let's say this motion or change didn't occur, right, then it would be a violation of PSR.
I mean, so the PSR explains it via the posing of the block, like the everything being equally real at once. Like that's the like explanatory concept within that question.
Yeah, no, I'm affirming like everything's equally real, but like if you're denying that motion occurred with this seed becoming a tree within like this past, like these past states that are all equally real moments of time, then it would end up, if that couldn't occur, you're basically saying that this seed that became a tree didn't move from a state of potential to actual to become a tree, right? Or it just happened as like a brute fact.
Well, I would offer the concept of potential and actual, just like I think I said it before, potential and actual just sort of are nonsense phrases within B theory of time. I would offer that.
Yeah.
Because you can technically traverse it in reverse. Potential, actual then becomes potential, and potential then becomes actual, and it becomes sort of meaningless. And I guess what I'd say is for you to pose the potential and actual as like real concepts that have to exist, you are presupposing via those a theory of time.
Yeah, I would just argue like I don't. It doesn't need a theory of time. Like within B theory of time, like there's still like past states or like
so let's lay this out like purely logical. Can something be both actual and potential?
at the same time and same respect.
Yes.
No.
Like so
can't.
if then the tree can't become the potential to become the seed because you're viewing it going backwards.
But it would be in different respects. Like for example, the seed would obviously every point in time is equally real, but so I guess you could say it's in the same time, but they're in different respects. The seed's a seed in respect to like it being a seed in year one, and then the seed's a tree in respect to it being a tree in year two, which are different respects.
I mean, I guess I don't follow what you mean by I guess I don't really follow what you mean by respect in that capacity.
Okay, so like for a contradiction to occur, it's like when a proposition is both true and false at the same time in same respect. So for example, like an example of one would be, let's say in respect to an apple's color, a contradiction would be the apple is red. The not P would be the apple is not red, right? This would be a P and not P in respect to the color because it's in the same respect, or same meaning, same sense, right? The reason this wouldn't be a contradiction with the seed thing is because it's in different respects. One's in respect to year one, i.e. the seed being a seed in year one, and the other is in respect to the seed being a tree in year two.
I guess I don't see how that's the respect in question. Because I'm not saying the seed is both. I'm saying that, let's say, I guess here's probably a better way to phrase it. I'm not actually commenting on the seed. I'm saying the tree at the same time is both potential and actual. depending on which direction that you're viewing it in. So can it be both potential and actual at the same time, and in the same respect to being the dependent cause of the next event in the chain?
And from the same in what was this respect again?
Can it be both potential and I'm trying to phrase this in your stuff, sorry. Can it be both potential and actual with respects to the causal chain, which is the dependency of the can it be both potential and actual with respect to the causal chain dependency that you're positing, which is the thing that's important, because that's the thing that you're basically trying to demonstrate it needs to be there.
Yeah, I would say that like no, but I wouldn't say that that's where that's not where it applies. Like when we're trying to figure out what the respect is, like we're trying to it's like asking like what exactly is being predicated of what. For example, is it in predication in terms of like essence, accidents, nature, relation, time, location, etc., right? So within the context of the seed here, as it would be in relation to the year it was planted, right? Or the year it existed, for example.
It would be in relation to the subjective viewpoints.
It'd be to like the years, I guess you could say.
Well, like this is actually because what's potential and what's actual under your concept is relative to what is appearing like the future. Because if you're going backwards in the block, then the past becomes the future and the future becomes the past. So the potential to actual is with respects to the subjective viewpoint specifically, if whether it's potential or actual. So that actually might be a good way to phrase it, where the idea of potential to actual is entirely subjective unto itself. It's a subjective interpretation.
Okay, wait. So you're saying like, okay. So you're saying with B theory of time, you can go backwards in time, where the future now becomes the past, and the past now becomes the future?
Well, like, if it's all real at the same time, like conceptually, you could go forward and back, right?
I don't know, because if like all points in time, past, present, future, are equally real, and I would say like they're ontologically fixed.
Well, that's the thing.
Like for example, like let's take like an entire timeline. It would be like if you imagine like the timeline is a book, like a static book. Nothing moves, nothing's like changing. It's already laid out. It's already done.
Well, I'm saying it. In that same way. I'm saying it's the same as what we're currently experiencing as people moving through the block in terms of our subjective experience. You could do it the other way, backwards. Like logically, there's nothing wrong with that. If it's possible to do it one way, it's possible to do it the other way. And I'm saying that the idea of potential and actual under your concept is actually dependent with respects to that subjective viewpoint of what direction you're experiencing it in. And the very concept of potential and actual is only relative to our subjective experience of feeling like we're moving through time.
What would something subjective be here then?
Like the same way, like if it's a block theory is true, our intuitive personal experience of moving through time isn't technically real in that sense, right? That's the subjective experience is the movement through the time, right? It doesn't mean that you couldn't move backwards through it. And then all the potential and actual is just relative to the present experience that we are subjectively experiencing. And our subjective experience isn't like the objective presence or anything like that.
Okay, so like I don't get how like making it so it's relative to a specific point in time means that that's subjective.
Because it's the subjective observer.
But like, okay, it's a subjective observer is observing it from the specific point in time, but like how does that mean that it's just purely subjective to that time, to that point in time? Like if each point of time is equally real, and something exists in this in like X point of time, like let's say the seed exists in X point of time, it's objectively true that at X point in time, this seed is real and exists.
So yes.
Now,
So
whether a subjective observer is observing that point in time doesn't matter. That seed is, it's objectively true that that seed exists at that point in time, because there can't be like, each moment is equally real. It can't like change.
oh, because for like the same reason we talked about past and future and stuff like that, potential and actual is also relative to potential and actual is also relative to the moment in time that you're referencing, and also the direction that you're traveling through it.
It's like you observe, you can observe it through like I guess your own subjective experience, but like I would say that it objectively exists within the timeline, in because past, present, and future do exist as equally real,
Right,
and
so
like I would affirm like PSR and things like that can't be violated, so it would
But
be
it's
like it would be
relative.
necessary.
But potential and actual would then be relative.
Would it relative to
The direction that you're traveling through time.
okay, so you're saying like you could potentially just travel through time inversely within B theory.
Oh, like if they're all real at the same time, like there very much could be creatures that are experiencing time the other way. Like that there's nothing that like makes that logically impossible. Maybe we'll find stuff that makes it like nomologically impossible. Maybe there's like an element to life that makes it impossible to actually do that experience and whatnot. But from like in B theory of time, if they're all equally real, there's no reason you couldn't go to point B and go back to point A as the progression rather than the regression. There's like no logical problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say like you could affirm that you could have like a subjective experience in which you move through time backwards with B theory, but like objectively, past, present, and future do exist within B theory. Like if, for example, if you're affirming, like if you deny that and you're, for example, then affirming like future objectively exists, but the past and present never did, then like I would say that doesn't logically follow. Like future wouldn't be the future, right?
Well, past, present, future are all relative to the like the moment in time that's being observed as well, right? Because those are relative terms to a moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, when you say 1, 2, 3, you're assuming a direction that time is progressing. If they're all equally real at the same time, then the progression of time is an illusion, right? It's something that we're experiencing as an illusion through our subjective experience as we work through time.
Mm-hmm.
That's ultimately like what B theory is.
Yeah.
And if they're all like objectively real at the same time, they don't have that dependency on one another for the different moments in time.
Mm-hmm.
Because it could go either direction. In the same way, like let's use like physical space dimensions as a comparative example here. Like if you had a block and you drew a picture on it, is the left side of the picture dependent on the right side of the picture?
Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying.
I'd say no, it isn't. And the progression of events is relative to just, it seems like it's happening to us, but it's more an illusion because we have a subjective experience of moving through time in a certain direction. So I guess ultimately, like, you can find B theory incredibly unpersuasive. I don't actually have an issue with that. I would say that the evidence probably points towards it, but
yeah, I would just say
if you want your overall argument to be, sorry,
I would affirm with this view theory of B theory of time that it's just like a metaphysical impossibility because it violates PSR. Like if you affirm this view of B theory of time, then B theory of time provides no explanation for why like something exists rather than not, or why something exists in the order or way it does.
Well, it could just be necessary.
Well, that
Why
would then
can't
be a
you?
brute fact and still violate PSR.
PSR is sort of nonsense, anyways. To get honest, like I feel like at least how you're treating it, like necessary would be the sufficient reason for it. I feel like PSR tends to be pulled out when people like have a specific answer they want, and they want to say that this thing doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel intuitive or good to me, even if the answer isn't necessarily good. But and yeah, it
Yeah.
could just be fruit. There could be something else that created the block. There could be something else that did, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The ultimate point being that there's just that point in your argument where you sort of, if you want to use the argument as you posed it, you sort of need to play theory of time. Otherwise, you just have to go a different route. And I think that's probably where just to answer Jacob, the core discussion is that he's using the argument for motion, and this is a discussion branched off from the impossibility of infinite regress within that, and the idea that there has to be a first cause at the beginning, which I would obviously disagree with based on what I've said here.
Nero, do you have Discord?
Yeah, but I don't want to connect it to my TikTok at all. I don't have any desire for that.
Yeah, all good. Well, maybe another time I'm live, I want to go down the route of why, like, I affirm why B theory of time would be a metaphysical impossibility, and like
Sure,
justifications for PSR and that type of stuff.
Sure, you'd have to also figure out a way to justify general relativity, but
Mm-hmm.
like I said, okay, so I think we're at like basically an agreement at that point where I think you have to prove A theory of time relative to B theory of time in order to make the argument that you're making, and you seem to now be affirming that A theory of time has to be like real because you're saying B theory can't be, which is fine. I think that's perfectly understandable as an argument to make, but I do think that that is another big hill that you have to get over before you
Yeah.
can prove it.
I just don't have the time for it right now.
Yeah,
'cause-
no, I sort of have to head out
Yeah,
too, so I think
yeah.
that's probably a good place to
Yeah.
end it.
Another,
It's nice
I'll
talking.
follow you on TikTok. Another time I go live, I'll invite you up so we can go into that.
Yeah, I'm on here sporadically, so if I remember and I see you on, sure.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate you coming up.
Yeah, have a good
All
one.
right. Appreciate y'all on TikTok. I'm gonna end the live here. We've been live for like 3 hours. I'm just too exhausted to debate. Appreciate y'all for all tuning in. Thank you. See ya. And all right, YouTube. I'm gonna I'm on vacation from tomorrow until like the 16th, and then I have to move in to college. My move-in date is the 20th. So I don't know when my next stream will be, but I'll figure out something with like figure out some timing. I might try to. I'm gonna be honest. I'm probably not gonna stream on vacation. I always say I will, and I don't. So, I'm probably not gonna stream on vacation, but I'll be on Discord for sure. But yeah, I don't know. It might be like 2 weeks before I go live again, just because I'll be busy. But yeah, appreciate y'all for all tuning in. This is where I'm gonna end the stream. And